The man cleaning toilets at midnight just saved a billionaire's life. And now, they both have a problem. Evelyn Cross, CEO, Forbes. 30 under 30, untouchable, shouldn't be begging her janitor for help. Lucas Hale, single father, invisible, forgotten, shouldn't know 17 ways to disable a surveillance system. But when she slipped him that note with trembling fingers, everything changed, because the people hunting her don't know what Lucas used to be, and the enemies Lucas buried in his past don't know he's been found. If you want to see how a ghost becomes a guardian, stay until the end. Hit that like button and comment your city below. I want to see how far this story travels. The fluorescent lights of Halcyon Group's 42nd floor hummed their usual lonely song at 11:47 p.m. Lucas Hale pushed his cleaning cart past floor-to-ceiling windows that framed Manhattan like a postcard of someone else's dreams. His reflection moved alongside him, gray uniform, weathered hands, a face people looked through rather than at. Exactly how he wanted it. "Daddy, will you be home when I wake up?" Mia's voice from that morning echoed in his head as he emptied a wastebasket. Her sleepy brown eyes, so much like her mother's, had searched his face for promises he always struggled to keep. "Always, sweetheart," he'd whispered, kissing her forehead. "Pancakes at 7 sharp." Mrs. Chen from 4B had nodded at him from her doorway, already prepared for another night of watching Mia sleep. The elderly woman never asked questions, never judged the strange hours. She simply accepted the cash Lucas left in envelopes and made sure his daughter was never alone. That was the deal Lucas had made with the universe 3 years ago. Invisibility in exchange for peace. Anonymity in exchange for survival. A janitor's wage and a rent-controlled apartment in exchange for the life he'd left bleeding out in the wreckage of his past. The executive suites were always empty this time of night. Lucas had memorized the patterns. Which lights stayed on, which offices held secrets in their wastebaskets, which executives worked late, and which ones merely wanted their colleagues to think they did. He knew that Jenkins in legal downloaded his divorce papers at 9 p.m. every Thursday. He knew that Sarah from marketing cried in the women's bathroom on the 15th floor every Monday. He knew that the CFO was stealing, the head of operations was drinking, and that half the C-suite was planning some kind of coup. He knew, because invisible men see everything. Lucas was wiping down the conference table in the West Wing when he heard it, the distinct click of heels on marble, too quick, too uneven. His hands didn't stop moving, but every nerve in his body went alert. 12 years of training didn't dissolve just because you mopped floors for a living. The footsteps stopped outside the conference room. Lucas didn't look up. Never look up. Invisible men don't notice things. "Excuse me." The voice was quiet but unmistakable. Evelyn Cross, the 29-year-old wunderkind who'd inherited Halcyon Group when her mother died and transformed it from a respected firm into a global empire in just 4 years. Lucas had seen her exactly 3 times in the 8 months he'd worked here, always from a distance, always surrounded by assistants and executives who moved around her like planets around the sun. Lucas straightened slowly, arranging his features into the pleasant blankness service workers perfected. "Yes, ma'am?" She stood in the doorway wearing a charcoal suit that probably cost more than his annual salary, but something was wrong. Her usually perfect posture was slightly bent. Her hands clutched a tablet like a shield, and her eyes, sharp gray eyes that had stared down senators and shareholders, were darting toward the darkened hallway behind her. "I'm sorry to bother you," she said, and Lucas heard something he didn't expect. Genuine fear. Is anyone else on this floor?" "No, ma'am. Just me and the night security downstairs." Her shoulders dropped half an inch. "What's your name?" "Lucas, ma'am." "Lucas." She tested the name like she was trying to remember if she'd heard it before. She hadn't. People like Evelyn Cross didn't learn the names of people like Lucas Hale. "How long have you worked here?" 8 months. "Do you work this floor every night?" "Yes, ma'am. Sunday through Thursday, 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. She nodded slowly, and Lucas watched her make some kind of internal calculation. When she spoke again, her voice was barely above a whisper. "Have you noticed anyone unusual? Anyone who shouldn't be here?" Every instinct screamed at Lucas to give the safe answer. "No, ma'am." Everything's normal. I just clean and leave. That's what invisible men did. That's how they stayed invisible. But something in her eyes, the particular shade of terror that came from being hunted, made him pause. "What kind of unusual?" he asked quietly. Evelyn glanced over her shoulder again, and Lucas caught the slight tremor in her hand. "Someone's been following me. Not just today. For weeks. Different men, always careful to stay just far enough away. They know my schedule, my routes. Yesterday I found my office door unlocked when I know I locked it. This morning, files on my desk were reorganized. Small things. Things I might convince myself I'm imagining, except..." She trailed off, and Lucas saw her swallow hard. "Except you're not imagining it," he finished softly. Her eyes snapped to his face, really seeing him for the first time. "No, I'm not." Lucas should have made an excuse, should have suggested she call security, talk to her people, hire a professional, should have done anything except what he did next. "The man in the black overcoat," he said, 40-something, gray at the temples, walks with a slight favor to his left leg. He's been in the lobby 3 times in the past 2 weeks. Always between 6 and 7 p.m., always pretending to wait for someone who never comes. Evelyn's face went pale. "You've seen him." "And the woman in the blue Honda Civic. She parks across the street every Tuesday and Thursday. Never gets out, just sits there watching the entrance for exactly 45 minutes. "Oh, God!" Evelyn's tablet slipped an inch in her grip. "I thought I was being paranoid. My head of security said I was stressed, that I was seeing patterns that weren't there." Lucas said nothing. He was already regretting opening his mouth, already calculating how quickly he could extract himself from this conversation and return to the safety of invisibility. But then Evelyn did something unexpected. She reached into her jacket pocket, pulled out a folded piece of paper, and held it out to him with a hand that shook slightly. "Please don't leave yet," she said quietly. Lucas stared at the note without taking it. "Ma'am, I think you need to call—" "I can't." The words came out sharp, almost desperate. "I can't trust anyone in this building. My head of security reports to my board. My board reports to my father. My father wants me to marry a man I barely know and merge Halcyon with his company. Everyone around me has an agenda, a loyalty to someone else, a reason to want me manageable." She thrust the note forward again. "You're the only person in this entire building who doesn't want anything from me. Please." Lucas looked at the note, then at her face, then at the dark hallway behind her where shadows pooled in the corners. He thought about Mia sleeping in their small apartment, about the promise he'd made to always come home, about the life he'd built from the ashes of the one he'd destroyed. He thought about the kind of man he used to be, and the kind of man he'd sworn never to become again. Then he took the note. The paper was expensive, heavy stock with an embossed Halcyon logo. The handwriting was clean but rushed. "Someone is following me. Please don't leave until I feel safe." Lucas folded the note carefully and slipped it into his pocket. "Where were you planning to go after this?" "My apartment, Upper East Side. My driver is waiting in the garage." "You trust your driver?" Evelyn hesitated. I think so. He's been with me for 2 years. 2 years of working for you or 2 years of working for Halcyon?" Her eyes widened slightly. "What's the difference?" "Loyalty," Lucas said simply. "If your father hired him, trained him, pays him through a Halcyon subsidiary, then he works for your father, not you." Evelyn's jaw tightened. "Marcus has always been professional, always respectful. That's not the same as loyal." She stared at him for a long moment, and Lucas could see her mind working, connecting dots she'd probably been avoiding for weeks. "So what do I do? Walk home?" "You have friends you trust? Family besides your father?" A bitter laugh escaped her throat. "My mother is dead. My father wants to control me. My stepbrother is more interested in his trust fund than anything I do. My friends from college all work in industries that depend on Halcyon's goodwill. Everyone in my life is somehow connected to the company." Lucas heard the isolation in her voice, the particular loneliness that came from standing at the top of a tower with no one to trust. He'd felt it himself once, in a different life. "What about tonight?" he asked. "Just tonight. What do you need to feel safe?" Evelyn looked around the conference room, at the sleek furniture, the expensive art, the view of the city she supposedly commanded, and Lucas saw something crack in her composure. "I don't know," she admitted quietly. "I haven't felt safe in weeks." The admission hung in the air between them. Lucas knew he should walk away, knew that every second he stood here was a second closer to destroying the careful invisibility he'd built. But something in her voice reminded him of the scared voices he'd once protected, back when protection was his purpose instead of his punishment. "Finish whatever you need to do here," he said finally. "I'll walk my normal route, keep an eye on the floor. When you're ready to leave, I'll ride down with you and make sure your driver is alone in that car." Relief flooded her face. "Thank you, I can pay you." "No." The word came out harder than he intended. "No payment, just be careful who you trust." "I'm trusting you." "You don't know me." "Exactly." A faint smile crossed her face. "You're the only person who doesn't want something from me. That makes you either the safest person in this building or the most dangerous." Lucas picked up his cleaning spray. "I just want to finish my shift and get home to my daughter." Something shifted in Evelyn's expression. Recognition, maybe, or understanding. "How old?" 7. "What's her name?" "Mia." Evelyn nodded slowly. "My mother used to say the only people you can really trust are the ones who have something more important to protect than what you can offer them. You have Mia. That makes you safe." Lucas thought about that logic, about how simple it sounded and how catastrophically wrong it could be. But he just said, "Give me 20 minutes to clear the floor." He left her in the conference room and moved through the executive suite with purpose, checking offices, testing door locks, studying shadows. His body fell into old patterns: threat assessment, exit mapping, vulnerability analysis. Patterns he'd promised himself he'd never use again. The west stairwell showed signs of recent traffic, scuff marks on steps that should have been pristine. Lucas crouched, studying the pattern. Two people, one significantly heavier than the other, moving up rather than down, moving up toward the executive floor. He straightened and pulled out his phone, thumb hovering over Mrs. Chen's number. If something happened, if he didn't make it home, she needed to know to call social services, to make sure Mia was taken care of. His daughter had already lost one parent. She couldn't lose both. But he didn't call. Not yet. Because maybe this was nothing. Maybe those scuff marks were from maintenance, from security making rounds, from any number of innocent explanations. Maybe. Lucas finished his sweep and returned to the conference room. Evelyn was standing at the window, phone pressed to her ear. "I don't care what the board thinks, Jonathan. Tell them the decision is final. No, we're not revisiting the Singapore contract because I said so. I'll deal with my father myself." She ended the call and turned to find Lucas waiting. "Sorry, crisis management never stops." "Ready to go?" "Yes." She gathered her tablet and bag. "Thank you for this. I know it's above and beyond janitorial duties." Lucas pushed his cart toward the elevator. "Just being observant." They rode down in silence, the elevator descending through 42 floors of steel and glass and secrets. Lucas watched the numbers tick down and tried to ignore how wrong this felt. Standing 3 feet from one of the most powerful women in New York while wearing a janitor's uniform and carrying the weight of a past she knew nothing about. The parking garage was 4 levels below ground, a concrete maze of shadows and echoes. Lucas had only been down here twice before, both times to empty trash from the security office. He didn't like it then, and liked it less now. Evelyn's driver stood beside a black Mercedes S-Class, scrolling through his phone. Marcus, early 50s, former military bearing, the kind of patient alertness that came from professional training. He looked up when the elevator opened and straightened to attention. "Miss Cross, I wasn't expecting you for another hour." "Change of plans?" Evelyn said smoothly. "I'll be working from home tomorrow." Marcus opened the rear door without comment, but Lucas saw his eyes flick toward the janitor standing beside his employer. Calculation in that glance. Questions. "Give me a second," Evelyn said, and walked around the car as if inspecting it. Lucas understood. She was giving him time to look, to assess, to tell her if something was wrong. He studied Marcus carefully. The driver's suit was clean, his posture professional, his hands empty except for the phone. The car's interior was visible through the open door, empty back seat, nothing unusual. But Lucas's instincts, rusty from disuse but still functioning, whispered warnings. Marcus was standing too carefully. His weight was distributed wrong, like someone preparing to move fast. And his left hand, the one holding the phone, had a slight callus on the web between thumb and forefinger. The kind of callus that came from hours of pistol training. Not unusual for a professional driver in New York. Lots of executive protection people carried weapons. But combined with the too careful stance and the calculating look, Lucas caught Evelyn's eye and gave a small shake of his head. Her face didn't change, but he saw her shoulders tense slightly. She pulled out her phone and made a show of checking something. Actually, Marcus, I'm going to catch a ride with my head of security. He's on his way down now. You can take the rest of the night off. Marcus's professional mask never wavered. Are you sure, Ms. Cross? It's late, and the streets... I'm sure. Thank you, Marcus. See you Monday. The driver nodded once, got in the Mercedes, and drove toward the exit with perfect, unhurried calm. Too calm. A man who'd just been unexpectedly dismissed should show some reaction. Relief, confusion, concern. Marcus showed nothing. Evelyn waited until the car disappeared up the ramp before speaking. What did you see? Maybe nothing. Maybe everything. Lucas gestured toward the elevator. But I don't think you should be alone tonight. What do you suggest? I can't go to a hotel without my credit cards being tracked. I can't go to my apartment if Marcus or whoever sent him knows I'll be there. Lucas thought about his daughter sleeping in their apartment, about the promise he'd made to keep her safe from the violence and chaos of his old life. Thought about what bringing Evelyn Cross into their home might mean. Then he thought about the look in Evelyn's eyes, the same trapped, desperate look he'd seen in the mirror 3 years ago when he'd decided to disappear. I know a place, he said quietly. Somewhere no one would think to look for you. Where? Queens, my apartment. It's not much, but it's safe, and nobody in your world knows it exists. Evelyn stared at him like he'd suggested flying to Mars. You want me to hide in your apartment? Just for tonight, until you can figure out who to trust and what to do next. My daughter is there with a neighbor watching her. Very safe, very quiet, completely off anyone's radar. I can't impose like that. It's not an imposition. It's a solution. Lucas checked the garage entrance, still empty, but that could change. But we need to decide now. Either I call you a regular cab and hope whoever's following you doesn't track it, or you come with me and buy yourself some time to think. Evelyn looked at him, really looked, the way she might look at a contract she was about to sign, weighing risks and benefits and potential disasters. If I do this, she said slowly, if I trust you tonight, I need to know one thing. Who are you really? Because men who notice surveillance patterns and assess drivers for weapons aren't usually janitors. Lucas met her gaze steadily. Right now, I'm just a man trying to get home to his daughter. Tomorrow, if you want answers, I'll give them to you. But tonight, you need to trust that I have no reason to hurt you, and every reason to keep my life simple and quiet. A long moment passed. Then Evelyn nodded. Okay, but I need to stop at an ATM. I only have about $40 in cash. No ATM, they track those too. Lucas started walking toward the garage's street exit. I'll cover whatever you need for tonight. I'm not a charity case, and I'm not a fool. You use any card, any digital payment, you might as well send up a flare telling people where you are. He pushed open the door to the street. Trust me or don't, but if you're going to do this, do it right. Evelyn followed him into the cool night air. Manhattan at midnight was never truly quiet. Cars still hummed past, a distant siren wailed, voices echoed from an all-night diner down the block. But compared to the tomb-like silence of Halcyon's parking garage, it felt alive. They walked 3 blocks before Lucas hailed a cab. He gave the driver an address 6 blocks from his actual apartment and paid in cash from a roll he kept in his pocket. Evelyn sat pressed against the far door, staring out at the city she supposedly ruled but couldn't trust. I've never done this before, she said quietly. Run, I mean. Hide. My mother always said a cross never retreats. Your mother ever have people trying to control her through fear? Every day of her life. Evelyn's reflection in the window looked tired, vulnerable. She just never let it show. The cab dropped them in Astoria, and they walked the final blocks to Lucas's apartment. The building was pre-war brick, the kind of place that had housed generations of immigrants and strivers and people just trying to survive. Lucas's unit was on the third floor, accessible via stairs that creaked with character and warning. He unlocked 3 separate locks and pushed the door open to reveal a space that was small but meticulously clean. 1 bedroom, a galley kitchen, a living room dominated by a child's art table and a worn couch. Every surface was organized, every item in its place, the apartment of a man who controlled the few things he could control. Mrs. Chen sat on the couch, knitting needles clicking softly. She looked up when they entered, her eyes taking in Evelyn's expensive suit with the same unflappable calm she brought to everything. "Mr. Lucas, you're early." "Emergency at work, Mrs. Chen. This is Evelyn. She's going to stay the night." "Is Mia asleep?" "Like a stone. She tried to wait up for you but couldn't make it past 8:30. Mrs. Chen gathered her knitting and stood. "I'll leave you to it. Same time tomorrow?" "Please." "And Mrs. Chen?" Lucas walked her to the door. "If anyone asks about tonight, anyone at all—" "I saw nothing, know nothing, remember nothing." She patted his arm. "You're a good man, Mr. Lucas. Don't let anyone tell you different." After she left, the apartment felt smaller with Evelyn standing in it. She looked around at the children's drawings taped to the walls, the stack of library books on the coffee table, the framed photo of Lucas and Mia at Coney Island, the only photograph in the entire apartment. "You weren't kidding about simple and quiet," she said. "It's what we need." Lucas moved to the kitchen. "Are you hungry? I can make something." "I shouldn't be. I had dinner at 6. But I'm starving." She laughed, a sound edged with hysteria. "I'm standing in a janitor's apartment in Queens hiding from my own driver, and all I can think about is food. What's wrong with me?" "Adrenaline crash. Your body's been in fight-or-flight mode for weeks. Now that you're somewhere safe, it's demanding fuel." Lucas pulled eggs and bread from the refrigerator. "Scrambled okay?" "Anything's fine." She sat at the small kitchen table while Lucas cooked, and for a few minutes the only sounds were eggs sizzling and bread toasting. Domestic sounds. Safe sounds. "Can I ask you something?" Evelyn said finally. "You can ask." "Earlier you said you'd give me answers tomorrow, about who you really are." She paused. "Are you dangerous?" Lucas plated the eggs and set them in front of her with toast and a glass of water. Then he sat across from her and met her eyes directly. "I used to be," he said honestly. "A long time ago, in a different life, I was trained to be very dangerous. But that man died the same night my wife did. What's left is just someone who wants to keep his daughter safe and his life quiet." Evelyn absorbed this, taking a bite of eggs she probably didn't taste. "Your wife. How did she die?" "Car accident. 3 years ago. She was 8 months pregnant with our second child." The words came out flat, emotionless, the only way Lucas could say them without breaking. "I wasn't driving. I wasn't even there, but I might as well have been behind the wheel." "I'm sorry." "So am I." Lucas stood and cleared his plate despite having not eaten. "You can have my bed. I'll take the couch. Bathroom's down the hall. There are clean towels in the cabinet." "Lucas." Evelyn caught his wrist as he passed, her grip surprisingly strong. "Thank you, for seeing me when I needed to be seen, for helping when you had every reason not to." He looked down at her hand on his arm, manicured nails, expensive watch, skin that had never known real work. Then he looked at her face and saw something that transcended wealth and power. Genuine gratitude from someone who rarely had reason to feel it. "Get some rest," he said gently. "Tomorrow we figure out what to do next." He extracted himself and moved to the living room, pulling a blanket from the closet. The couch was familiar territory. He'd slept there plenty of nights when nightmares made the bedroom unbearable. Tonight wouldn't be different, except for the CEO of Halcyon Group sleeping 20 feet away, and the growing certainty that the simple, quiet life he'd built was about to become very complicated. Lucas checked the locks one more time, then lay down and stared at the ceiling. Through the thin walls, he could hear Mia's soft breathing from the bedroom Evelyn was borrowing. His daughter, his anchor, his reason for choosing invisibility. But some ghosts, Lucas was learning, didn't stay buried just because you wanted them to. And some promises, like the one he'd just made to protect Evelyn Cross, had a way of pulling you back into the life you'd sworn to leave behind. He closed his eyes and tried not to think about surveillance patterns, about drivers with calluses from weapons training, about powerful fathers who controlled their daughters through fear. Tried not to think about how easily he'd slipped back into assessment mode, into protection protocols, into the patterns of the man he'd been before. But sleep wouldn't come, because somewhere in Manhattan, people were looking for Evelyn Cross. And when they couldn't find her in her apartment or her office or any of the places she was supposed to be, they would start looking harder. They would start asking questions. And eventually, those questions would lead them here, to a small apartment in Queens where a janitor lived with his daughter and pretended he'd never been anyone else. Lucas opened his eyes and stared at the dark ceiling, listening to the sounds of his daughter breathing and thinking about all the ways this could go catastrophically wrong. Tomorrow, he decided. Tomorrow he would help Evelyn find someone else to protect her, someone professional, someone without a 7-year-old daughter to protect, someone who didn't have ghosts of their own waiting in the shadows. Tomorrow he would return to being invisible. But first, he had to survive tonight. And in the darkness of his living room, with Evelyn Cross sleeping in his bed and danger circling closer with each passing hour, Lucas Hale began to accept a truth he'd been running from for 3 years. Some men were built for quiet lives and gentle moments, and some men, no matter how hard they tried to be something else, were built for war. The question was which kind of man he'd become when the shooting started, because it always eventually started shooting. Lucas woke to the smell of burning toast and his daughter's delighted laughter. For one disoriented moment, he thought he'd dreamed the entire previous night, Evelyn Cross, the note, the fear in her eyes. Then he heard a woman's voice, unfamiliar and slightly panicked, saying, "I don't think it's supposed to smoke like that." He was off the couch and in the kitchen in 3 seconds flat. Mia stood on a step stool beside the counter, wearing her favorite pajamas with the dinosaurs, while Evelyn Cross, billionaire CEO, in yesterday's wrinkled suit, frantically waved a dish towel at the smoke detector. The toaster had indeed produced something that might once have been bread, but now more closely resembled charcoal. "Daddy!" Mia beamed at him. "Miss Evelyn was trying to make breakfast, but the toaster is being mean." Lucas crossed to the smoke detector and silenced it with practiced ease. "The toaster's been temperamental since 2023. You have to hold the lever down for exactly 30 seconds. Evelyn lowered the dish towel, her face flushed with embarrassment. "I was trying not to wake you. I'm apparently not very good at simple tasks before coffee." "Nobody's good at anything before coffee." Lucas lifted Mia off the step stool and kissed the top of her head. "Go brush your teeth, sweetheart. I'll make real breakfast." "Can Miss Evelyn stay for pancakes?" Mia asked hopefully. "You said pancakes at 7 sharp, and it's 7 sharp." Lucas glanced at the kitchen clock, 7:02 a.m., and then at Evelyn, who looked like she'd barely slept. "If Miss Evelyn wants to stay for pancakes, she's welcome to." "I'd love to," Evelyn said softly, and something in her voice made Lucas think she meant it. Mia scampered off to the bathroom, leaving them alone in the smoky kitchen. Evelyn slumped against the counter and ran a hand through her hair, destroying whatever remained of yesterday's professional styling. "I didn't sleep," she admitted. "I kept thinking about Marcus, about my father, about how many people in my life might be reporting back to someone else. Do you know what that feels like, to suspect everyone?" Lucas pulled out the pancake mix. "Yes." "When?" "Every day for the last 3 years." He cracked eggs into a bowl. "Coffee's in the cabinet above the sink, mugs to the right." Evelyn moved through his kitchen with the careful hesitation of someone in unfamiliar territory. She found the coffee, found the mugs, found the sugar and creamer. Lucas watched her from the corner of his eye as he mixed batter, this woman who commanded boardrooms and managed billions, reduced to grateful silence by the simple ritual of making coffee in someone else's kitchen. "I need to ask you something," she said finally, cradling a steaming mug between her hands. "And I need you to be honest with me." "Okay. Last night when you looked at Marcus, what exactly did you see? What made you tell me not to trust him?" Lucas poured batter onto the griddle, watching it sizzle and spread. His stance was wrong. He was balanced like someone expecting trouble, and he had a callus on his hand consistent with regular firearms training. Lots of professional drivers train with firearms. True, but most don't position themselves to draw and fire in under 2 seconds. Marcus was ready for violence, which means he was either expecting it or prepared to deliver it. Evelyn set down her mug with a sharp click. You got all that from 30 seconds in a parking garage? I got that from 12 years of training and 4 years of field work. Lucas flipped the pancakes with smooth precision. You wanted honesty. That's the honest answer. What kind of field work? The kind that doesn't exist in official records. Silence settled between them, heavy with implications. Mia's voice drifted from the bathroom, singing something about dinosaurs and rainbows. The pancakes cooked, the coffee steamed, and Lucas waited for Evelyn to decide whether she wanted to know more or leave it alone. Were you CIA? She asked quietly. Special forces? Some kind of contractor? Does it matter? It matters if I'm trusting you with my life. Lucas plated the pancakes and turned to face her directly. I was someone who protected people, sometimes from threats they knew about, sometimes from threats they didn't. I was good at it. Too good. And when my wife died because I was too focused on other people's problems to notice hers, I walked away from all of it. What was her problem? She was exhausted, 8 months pregnant, working overtime as an ER nurse, trying to hold our life together while I disappeared for weeks at a time. She fell asleep at the wheel driving home from a double shift. Lucas's voice stayed steady through sheer force of will. The other driver survived. Our unborn son didn't, and neither did the man I used to be. Evelyn's face softened with understanding. So you became invisible. I became available, present. The kind of father Mia deserves instead of the kind who's always chasing someone else's emergency. He grabbed syrup from the cabinet. Now you know. Still want those pancakes? More than ever, she said, and Lucas heard the unspoken message. I trust you more now, not less. Breakfast was strange and wonderful in equal measure. Mia chattered endlessly about school and her friend Sophie and the art project they were doing about ocean animals. Evelyn listened with what seemed like genuine interest, asking questions about Mia's favorite sea creature, octopuses because they're smart, and whether she'd ever been to an aquarium. Yes, 3 times, all with Daddy. What do you do, Miss Evelyn? Mia asked, syrup dotting her chin. Evelyn glanced at Lucas, who gave a small shrug. Your call. I run a company, Evelyn said carefully. We help other companies solve problems. What kind of problems? Complicated ones. Money problems, planning problems, people problems. Mia considered this seriously. Daddy says every problem has a solution if you're patient and smart. Are you patient and smart? A smile ghosted across Evelyn's face. I'm smart. I'm working on patient. You should practice more. Daddy says practice makes... Mia stopped mid-sentence, her eyes going wide. Daddy, it's 7:30. I'm going to be late for school. Lucas checked the clock. 7:28 a.m. You're fine, sweetheart. Go get dressed. Sophie's mom is picking you up at 8:15, remember? Mia bolted from the table, leaving chaos in her wake. Syrup sticky fingers on the chair, a half-finished glass of milk, crumbs everywhere. The universal debris field of a 7-year-old's breakfast. She's wonderful, Evelyn said softly. You're raising a remarkable kid. She's raising herself. I'm just trying not to screw it up. Lucas started clearing plates. Look, about today. You need a plan beyond hiding in Queens. People will notice you're missing. Your assistant, your board, your father. I called out sick last night. Sent an email from my phone saying I had food poisoning and would be working from home. That buys me until Monday morning. Evelyn stood and carried her mug to the sink. But you're right. I can't hide forever. I need to know who I can trust and who I can't. And you need protection. Real protection, not a janitor playing bodyguard. Can you recommend someone? Lucas thought about the people he used to know, the ones who might still be alive and operational. Maybe. But first we need to know exactly what you're dealing with. You said someone's been following you for weeks. When did it start? Evelyn leaned against the counter, arms crossed. About a month ago, right after I rejected my father's merger proposal. Tell me about the merger. My father wants me to combine Halcyon with Cordova Industries. It's run by Richard Cordova, a man my father has been grooming as the perfect match for me since I was 23. Richard is smart, connected, and completely loyal to my father's vision, which is to build an empire. My mother built Halcyon on ethics and innovation. My father wants to turn it into a machine for accumulating power. The Cordova merger would give him exactly that: defense contracts, government connections, enough leverage to influence policy at the highest levels. Lucas rinsed a plate, thinking, and if you don't marry Richard, then the merger doesn't happen. The board won't approve it without family alignment. They remember my mother's values, even if my father's forgotten them. So your father has a motive to pressure you. What about Richard? How does he feel about this arranged marriage? Evelyn's laugh was bitter. Richard thinks it's a brilliant business move. He actually said that to me. Evelyn, this is a brilliant business move. Not I love you, not I want to build a life with you. Just cold calculation dressed up as romance. Do you think Richard would hurt you to get what he wants? I don't know. 6 months ago, I would have said no. Now, she shrugged helplessly. I don't know anything anymore. Mia burst back into the kitchen wearing mismatched socks and a t-shirt with a sparkly unicorn. Daddy, can you braid my hair? The French kind, not the regular kind. Lucas dried his hands. Come here, Trouble. He braided Mia's hair while Evelyn watched, and Lucas was suddenly hyper-aware of how domestic this all was. The morning routine, the casual intimacy, the sense of normalcy he'd built from nothing, and how quickly it could all shatter if the wrong people came looking. The buzzer rang at 8:14 a.m. Sophie's mom right on time. Lucas walked Mia to the door, made sure she had her backpack and lunchbox, kissed her goodbye with the usual ritual: forehead, nose, both cheeks. Love you to the moon, Daddy. Love you to the stars, sweetheart. Be good for Mrs. Patterson. The door closed behind her, and suddenly the apartment felt too quiet. Lucas turned to find Evelyn standing in the middle of the living room, looking lost. What now? She asked. Now we figure out who's watching you and why. Lucas pulled out his phone. I need to make some calls. People I used to work with, see if anyone's heard chatter about Halcyon or your father. Is that safe? Won't calling them expose you? Probably. But if someone's serious enough to put surveillance on you, they're serious enough to escalate. We need information before that happens. He gestured to the couch. Make yourself comfortable. This might take a while. The first call was to a number Lucas hadn't dialed in 3 years. It rang 4 times before a gravelly voice answered. This is a surprise. Hey, Tommy. A long pause. Jesus Christ, Lucas Hale, I thought you were dead. I was. I got better. That's not how being dead works. Tommy's voice shifted, cautious now. Where are you calling from? Somewhere safe. I need information, Tommy. Quietly. Of course you do. Nobody calls me for the sparkling conversation. Papers rustled in the background. What do you need? Anything you've heard about Halcyon Group, the CEO, Evelyn Cross, her father, William Cross. Anyone putting pressure on them, any unusual contracts, any private security firms getting involved. More silence. That's a big ask, Luke. Those people move in circles I don't touch without a very good reason. I'm giving you a very good reason. Which is? Lucas looked at Evelyn, who was watching him with desperate hope. Someone's hunting a civilian. I want to know who and why before they succeed. Tommy exhaled slowly. You back in the game? No, just helping someone who needs it. Right. And I'm just a simple information broker. Tommy's keyboard clicked rapidly. Give me 2 hours. I'll see what I can find. Same drop protocol as before? Yeah, and Tommy, this stays between us. Everything stays between us, Luke. That's why you pay me. The line went dead. Lucas made 3 more calls, each to someone he'd trusted in his old life, each receiving the same request for information. By the time he finished, it was almost 10 a.m., and Evelyn looked ready to crawl out of her skin with nervous energy. How long do we wait? She asked. 2 hours minimum. Tommy's fast but thorough. The others will take longer. Lucas pocketed his phone. In the meantime, you need to think about your inner circle. Who knows your schedule? Who has access to your calendar, your apartment, your daily routine. Evelyn started ticking off names on her fingers. My assistant, Rachel. My head of security, James. My driver, Marcus. My housekeeper comes 3 times a week. The building has a full security staff. My father has his own key to my apartment, a gift from my mother before she died that I never changed. Your father has a key? Yes. He's used it maybe twice in 4 years, both times when I was traveling and he needed something from my home office. But yes, he has access. Lucas absorbed this, connecting dots. What about your deputy? Your second in command at Halcyon? Victoria Chen. She's been with the company for 8 years, worked her way up from analyst to COO. Brilliant strategist, loyal to the company, professional to a fault. Loyal to the company or loyal to you? Evelyn opened her mouth to answer, then closed it. I always thought they were the same thing. They're not, especially if your father still has influence in the company. Could Victoria see a future where she benefits from you being manageable, married to Richard, focused on family instead of business? Victoria's ambitions are her own career, not mine. If anything, she'd want me strong and independent so she could rise with me. But doubt crept into Evelyn's voice. At least I thought that's what she wanted. Lucas's phone buzzed. A text from Tommy. Check the usual place. Interesting stuff. That was fast, Lucas muttered. He opened an encrypted email account he hadn't accessed in years and found a file waiting. The contents made his jaw tighten. What is it? Evelyn moved closer. Tommy found surveillance contracts. 3 different firms hired in the past 6 weeks, all paid through shell companies, all tracking your movements. Lucas scrolled through the document. He's also got communications intercepts. Someone's been monitoring your phone calls, your emails, your text messages. Evelyn's face went pale. Everything? Everything, including the email you sent last night calling out sick. Lucas looked up at her. Whoever's doing this knows you're not at home. They know you're somewhere off-grid, and they're going to be looking very hard to find you. Then we need to move. Get somewhere they can't get. No. If we run without knowing who's chasing us, we'll run right into their arms. We need to stay here, stay quiet, and figure out who's pulling the strings. Lucas closed his phone. Tommy's still digging, but based on the contract payments, this is someone with serious resources. Government-level resources. My father. Maybe. Or someone using your father's money without his knowledge. Or Richard Cordova. Or Victoria Chen positioning herself for a power play. We don't know yet. Evelyn sank onto the couch, her usual composure fracturing. This is insane. I run a Fortune 500 company. I have security, lawyers, resources. How did I end up hiding in Queens while my entire life gets picked apart? Because resources don't matter when you can't trust the people controlling them. Lucas sat across from her. But here's what we do know. Whoever's doing this wants you scared and isolated. They want you to feel like you have no options except the ones they're offering. Marriage to Richard, merger with Cordova, your father's vision for Halcyon. So what do? You stop being scared and start being angry. Lucas leaned forward. You're Evelyn Cross. You built an empire before you turned 30. You've stared down senators and shareholders and every person who said you were too young, too female, too idealistic to succeed. You didn't get where you are by rolling over when threatened. Something flickered in Evelyn's eyes. Recognition, maybe, or remembering. You sound like my mother. Your mother sounds like she was smart. She was. She also died at 52 from a stress-induced heart attack because she couldn't figure out how to fight my father without destroying the company she built. Evelyn's voice cracked. I don't want to be her, Lucas. I don't want to choose between my integrity and my survival. Then we find a third option. What third option? I'm being surveilled, manipulated, pushed toward a marriage I don't want. You expose them. Lucas stood and started pacing, his mind sliding into tactical mode. We gather evidence of the surveillance, the manipulation, the conspiracy. We document everything. The shell companies, the security firms, the communications intercepts. Then you take it to your board, to the press, to whoever needs to see it, and you burn down everyone involved. And if my father's at the center of it, then you burn him too. Evelyn stared at him. You make it sound simple. It's not simple. It's brutal and risky and could cost you everything. But it's better than spending the rest of your life wondering who you can trust. Lucas stopped pacing. Unless you want to marry Richard and let your father win, I'd rather set myself on fire. Then we fight. The words hung in the air between them, a promise, a declaration, a point of no return. Lucas saw the moment Evelyn made her choice, saw her spine straighten and her jaw set, and that particular fire returned to her eyes. "Okay," she said quietly. "We fight. But I need to know something first." "What? Why are you doing this? Really? You don't owe me anything. You have a daughter to protect, a life to preserve. Why risk it all for someone you met 12 hours ago?" Lucas thought about the question, about the easy answers and the true ones. "Because you remind me of why I did this work in the first place, before it became about politics and power plays and which side paid better. You're someone who needs protection, who deserves protection, and who has nowhere else to turn. That used to matter to me." "Used to? It still does. I just forgot for a while." Evelyn nodded slowly. "What do we do first?" "First, I call in a favor. Someone who can help us gather evidence without exposing our position." Lucas pulled out his phone again. "Then we start building a case so airtight that even your father's lawyers can't tear it apart." "Who's the favor?" "Her name is Sarah Reeves, former FBI cybercrime specialist, now freelance digital forensics. If there's a trail to follow, she'll find it." "Can she be trusted?" 3 years ago, she testified against her own supervising agent for evidence tampering. It cost her the career she'd built for 15 years, so yes, she can be trusted. Lucas dialed the number. Whether she'll help is another question. The phone rang twice. "This better be important. I'm in the middle of a trace." "Sarah? It's Lucas." A sharp intake of breath. "Holy hell. Lucas Hale. Tommy said you'd resurface, but I didn't believe him." "Tommy talks too much." "Tommy's the only reason I knew you weren't actually dead. What do you need?" "Full digital forensics on a surveillance operation. Multiple firms, shell company payments, communications intercepts. I need to know who's running it, who's paying for it, and what their endgame is." "That's not a favor, Luke. That's a major operation. What's the target?" "A civilian. CEO of a Fortune 500. Someone's trying to control her through fear and manipulation." Sarah was quiet for a moment. "This civilian have a name?" Lucas glanced at Evelyn, who nodded. "Evelyn Cross. Halcyon Group." "Shit." "Luke, that's high profile. If I dig into Halcyon systems and get caught..." "You won't get caught. You're too good for that. Flattery doesn't pay legal fees." "No, but this does." Lucas named a figure that made Evelyn's eyebrows rise. "Half up front, half on completion, plus expenses." "Where are you getting that kind of money? I thought you were working as a janitor." "I am. The money's coming from someone who needs this done." Lucas looked at Evelyn, who nodded again. "Are you in?" Another pause. "Send me what you have. I'll take a preliminary look. If it's too hot, I walk away." "Deal?" "Deal. And Sarah?" "This stays quiet. No paper trail, no digital footprint, no mentions to anyone." "Like I'd advertise working with a ghost." She hung up. Lucas forwarded Tommy's files to Sarah's encrypted email, then set his phone aside. Now we wait again. "How long?" 4 hours, maybe 6. Sarah's thorough. Lucas checked the time, 11:15 a.m. "Are you hungry? I can make lunch. I'm too nervous to eat." Evelyn stood and walked to the window, looking out at the Queen Street below. "This is surreal. Yesterday I was running a company. Today I'm hiding in an apartment while hackers dig through my life. Yesterday someone was hunting you. Today you're hunting them back. That's progress." "Is it?" She turned to face him. "Because it feels like I'm dragging you and Mia into danger. What happens when they figure out where I am? What happens when they come here?" "They won't come here. Nobody knows about this place." "Marcus knew you worked at Halcyon. If he's part of this, if he tells them about the janitor who intervened, then they'll look for a janitor named Lucas who works nights. They'll find employment records showing I've been there 8 months with no incidents, no red flags, no reason to be interesting. They might even interview me. And I'll tell them I saw you leave in your car with your driver, just like always. You'd lie to them. I'd protect you, that's different. Evelyn crossed her arms. What about Mia? If they connect you to me, if they threaten her, they won't. Lucas's voice was steel. Because if they even look at my daughter wrong, I'll remind them why people used to be afraid of me. The words were quiet, but carried the weight of absolute conviction. Evelyn heard it and went still. Who were you, Lucas? Before the invisibility? Before the janitor's uniform? Who were you really? Lucas walked to a drawer in the kitchen and pulled out an envelope he hadn't opened in 3 years. Inside was a single photograph. Younger Lucas in tactical gear, standing with 4 other men in front of a helicopter. The location was deliberately obscured, the faces carefully neutral, but the weapons they carried and the alert readiness in their postures told the story. He handed the photo to Evelyn. I was part of a protection unit that didn't officially exist. We handled high-value targets in high-risk situations. Politicians in war zones, witnesses against cartels, refugees from trafficking networks. Anyone who needed to stay alive long enough to make a difference. How long did you do this? 4 years active, 8 years training before that. I was good at it, really good. Too good to walk away easily. Lucas took the photo back and returned it to the drawer. But when my wife died, I realized I'd been protecting everyone except the people who actually mattered. So I disappeared into the kind of life where the biggest danger is a broken toaster. Until last night. Until last night, he agreed. Evelyn studied him with new understanding. You know this isn't going to end quietly, don't you? Once we start exposing people, once we start threatening their plans, they're going to come after you. They're going to try to destroy you the way they tried to destroy me. Let them try. You say that now, but, Evelyn. Lucas met her eyes steadily. I made a promise last night to keep you safe. I don't break promises, especially not to people who trusted me when they had no reason to. She held his gaze for a long moment, and something shifted between them, an understanding, an alliance, the beginning of trust built on honesty instead of hierarchy. Okay, she said finally. Then let's figure out how to burn down everyone who thought they could control me. Lucas's phone buzzed. Another message from Tommy. Your girl's in deeper trouble than you thought. Call me. Now. He dialed immediately. What did you find? Remember how I said the surveillance was government-level resources? I was wrong. It's military-level resources, black budget operations, the kind of stuff that doesn't show up on any official ledger. Tommy's voice was tight with concern. Luke, whoever's running this operation has access to tools and personnel that shouldn't exist. We're talking about deep state connections, intelligence community favors, serious power. Walk me through it. The shell companies paying for the surveillance trace back to a private equity firm called Meridian Holdings. Meridian's board includes 3 former defense secretaries, 2 retired generals, and 1 very active senator. Their client list is mostly defense contractors and intelligence fronts. Lucas's stomach sank. And Cordova Industries? Cordova's their golden child. Richard Cordova sits on Meridian's advisory board. His company has contracts with 17 different government agencies, including some that officially don't exist. So if Evelyn marries Richard, then Meridian gets access to Halcyon's technology, patents, and research divisions. We're talking about artificial intelligence, quantum computing, biotech innovations, all the stuff that keeps defense contractors salivating. Combined with Cordova's existing military contracts, you're looking at a private empire with more influence than most countries. Lucas looked at Evelyn, who was watching him with growing alarm. What about William Cross? Is he part of Meridian? Not officially, but 3 years ago, Meridian bailed out one of his failing ventures to the tune of $80 million. Since then, he's been very cooperative with their interests. Tommy paused. Luke, this isn't just about corporate control. This is about building a military-industrial pipeline that bypasses government oversight entirely. How far will they go to make this happen? As far as they need to. These people don't threaten. They eliminate obstacles. Tommy's voice dropped. You need to get your civilians somewhere very safe and very far from you. Because when they figure out she's got help, they're going to erase everyone involved. I'm not running. Then you're stupid. These aren't corporate security guards, Luke. These are professionals who make people disappear for a living. So was I. Was. Past tense. You've been retired for 3 years. They're active, connected, and motivated. You're one man with a daughter to protect. Do the math. Lucas closed his eyes. Send me everything you have, all of it. Luke, everything, Tommy, then delete your copies and forget we ever talked. A heavy sigh. You always were too stubborn for your own good. Files incoming. And Luke? Watch your six. These people don't miss. The call ended. Lucas set down his phone and found Evelyn standing close, her face pale but determined. I heard enough, she said quietly. This is bigger than my father wanting me to marry Richard. This is about Meridian Holdings turning Halcyon into a weapons pipeline. Looks that way. Then we can't just expose the surveillance. We need to expose the entire conspiracy. Meridian, Cordova, my father, all of it. That's declaring war on people who have unlimited resources and zero conscience. I know. Evelyn's jaw set. But my mother built Halcyon to help people, to innovate for good. I'm not letting it become a tool for military profiteering. I don't care who I have to fight. Lucas saw the same fire in her eyes that had made her a CEO before 30. Then we're going to need more help. Sarah can dig through the digital trail, but we need someone who can protect you when this goes public. Someone who specializes in keeping people alive when powerful enemies want them dead. Someone like you used to be. Someone better than I ever was. Lucas pulled up another contact on his phone. Her name is Diana Frost. Best close protection specialist I know. If anyone can keep you breathing through what's coming, it's her. Will she help? Only one way to find out. Lucas dialed the number and waited through 4 rings before a crisp voice answered. Lucas Hale. I heard you were dead. Third person today. I'm starting to think I need better friends. A dry laugh. What do you need? Close protection for a civilian. High-value target, multiple threats, conspiracy reaching into government and military circles. That's above my usual pay grade. Name your price. Silence. You're serious. As a heart attack. More silence, then. Where and when? Queens, my apartment. As soon as you can get here. Give me 3 hours. Diana's voice shifted. All business now. And Luke? If this is as big as you're suggesting, you better be ready for war, because that's what's coming. I know. Good. See you at 3. She hung up. Lucas turned to find Evelyn watching him with a mix of fear and determination. Diana's coming. Once she's here, you'll have professional protection. The kind that doesn't sleep, doesn't miss, and doesn't quit until the job is done. What about you? I'll coordinate intelligence, work with Sarah on the digital investigation, and make sure Mia stays safe and completely unconnected to any of this. You're not staying with me? Lucas shook his head. Diana's better at close protection than I ever was. My skills are in threat assessment and strategic planning. I can help you more from the outside. Evelyn absorbed this, then nodded slowly. Okay, but promise me something. What? Promise me that if this gets too dangerous, if they threaten Mia, you'll walk away. I can't live with myself if your daughter pays the price for my problems. Lucas thought about the promise he'd made last night, about the man he used to be and the father he'd become. I promise I'll keep Mia safe. That's the only promise I can make. It wasn't the answer Evelyn wanted, but it was the truth. And in the war they were about to fight, truth was the only weapon that mattered. Diana Frost arrived at 2:47 p.m., 13 minutes early, carrying a duffel bag that Lucas knew contained enough firepower to start a small war. She was 42, lean as a whip, with short-cropped blonde hair and eyes that missed nothing. She'd been his instructor once, back when he was young and thought he knew everything. She'd taught him how little he actually knew and how to survive long enough to learn more. You look soft, she said by way of greeting, studying Lucas with professional assessment. 3 years pushing a mop will do that. Good to see you too, Diana. She stepped inside and her gaze swept the apartment in 3 seconds flat. Exits, sight lines, defensive positions, vulnerabilities. Cozy. Where's the principal? Evelyn emerged from the bedroom wearing clothes Lucas had borrowed from Mrs. Chen, jeans and a sweater that didn't quite fit. Without the designer suit and perfect styling, She looked younger, more vulnerable, but also more real. "Cross," Diana said, extending a hand. "Diana Frost. I'll be keeping you alive for the foreseeable future." Evelyn shook her hand. "That's a refreshing level of directness. I don't have time for corporate pleasantries. You're being hunted by people with serious resources and zero conscience. My job is to make sure they fail." Diana dropped her duffel on the couch. "Lucas briefed me on the basics. Meridian Holdings, Cordova Industries, your father's involvement. What he didn't tell me is why you're still in Queens instead of on a plane to somewhere without extradition treaties." "Because running means they win," Evelyn said firmly. "My mother built Halcyon to mean something. I'm not letting it become a weapons factory." Diana looked at Lucas. "She always this idealistic?" "Apparently." "Good. Idealists fight harder." Diana unzipped her duffel and started unpacking with practiced efficiency. Handgun, spare magazines, laptop, surveillance detection equipment, emergency medical supplies. "Here's how this works. I don't sleep when you sleep. I don't eat when you eat. I don't take breaks, vacations, or personal calls. My entire existence revolves around keeping you breathing. In exchange, you do exactly what I say, when I say it, without question or hesitation. Understood?" "Understood," Evelyn said quietly. "Good. First rule, we don't stay here. This location is compromised the moment anyone connects Lucas to you, which means we have maybe 24 hours before it becomes a kill box." Diana looked at Lucas. "You have a safe house?" "No, I've been invisible, remember? No contingencies, no backup plans." "Then we need one. Somewhere off-grid, no paper trail, no digital footprint." Diana's phone buzzed and she glanced at it. "I've got a place in Jersey. Industrial area, buildings abandoned on paper but fully functional. Nobody looks twice at another warehouse." Lucas didn't like it. "That puts Evelyn an hour from the city. If something happens, an hour is close enough to respond and far enough to not get caught in the initial blast radius." Diana's tone left no room for argument. "We move tonight, after dark. Until then, we fortify here and prepare for the worst." "What's the worst?" Evelyn asked. Diana met her eyes without flinching. "They breach this apartment, kill everyone inside, and make it look like a gas leak or robbery gone wrong. You disappear. Lucas disappears. His daughter becomes a tragic footnote in the news cycle." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Evelyn's face went pale, but she didn't look away. "Then we make sure that doesn't happen." "Damn right we do." Diana pulled out her laptop. "I need everything you have on Meridian Holdings. Financial records, board members, contract details, any connection to Halcyon or Cordova Industries." Lucas forwarded Tommy's files while Diana set up a secure workspace on his kitchen table. Within minutes, she had 3 screens running, one tracking dark web chatter about Halcyon, one analyzing the shell company payments, one monitoring news feeds for any mention of Evelyn's disappearance. "They're already looking," Diana said, pointing to a screen. "Your assistant filed a missing person report 2 hours ago. Says you didn't respond to calls or messages, which is unusual. NYPD is treating it as low priority since you're an adult who called out sick, but that'll change when your father applies pressure." Evelyn moved closer to read the screen. "Rachel filed a report, but I told her I was working from home." Which means either Rachel's genuinely worried or someone told her to escalate your disappearance into official channels. Diana pulled up another window. Either way, the clock's ticking. Once the police start checking traffic cameras, credit card usage, phone pings, they'll notice you went dark. That's when the real hunters get involved. "How long do we have?" 12 hours, maybe less. Meridian has friends in law enforcement. They'll hear about the missing person report and start their own search." Diana's fingers flew across the keyboard. "We need to move faster than they can react. Lucas, where's Sarah with the digital forensics?" "She said 4 to 6 hours. That puts her findings around 5 or 6 p.m. "Call her. Tell her we need preliminary results now, something we can use to buy time or create leverage." Lucas dialed Sarah's number. She answered on the first ring, sounding exhausted. "I was just about to call you. Luke, this is worse than I thought." "How bad?" "I found the Surveillance Operations Command Center. It's running out of a server farm in Virginia. Same facility that houses half of the intelligence community's black operations. Whoever set this up has top-level security clearance and unlimited resources. Sarah's voice was tight with stress. But that's not the worst part. I found communications logs showing they've been monitoring Evelyn Cross for 6 months, not 6 weeks. This operation started the day after her mother died. Lucas felt his blood run cold. They've been planning this since the funeral? Longer. I found earlier correspondence suggesting they approached William Cross about the merger before his wife's death. He rejected them initially, but after she died, he became very cooperative. There's even a coded message suggesting... Sarah stopped abruptly. Suggesting what? A long pause. Luke, I found medical records. Elizabeth Cross's death was ruled a heart attack, natural causes, no autopsy. But there's a deleted email chain discussing how convenient it was that she died when she did, right before she was about to restructure Halcyon's board to limit her husband's influence. The room went silent. Evelyn's face had gone white as paper. Are you saying they killed my mother? Sarah's voice came through the speaker, careful and precise. I'm saying the timing is suspicious and there are people who benefited enormously from her death. Whether that constitutes murder or just callous opportunism, I can't prove. But the pattern suggests this has been a long-term operation to seize control of Halcyon, with or without your cooperation. Evelyn swayed slightly. Lucas caught her elbow, steadying her. Sarah, can you send what you have? Everything, even if it's not conclusive. Already done. Files are encrypted and uploading to the secure server now. But Luke, if I found this, Meridian's security team will find my digital footprints eventually. I've covered my tracks, but these people are good. You need to move fast. We will. Thanks, Sarah. Delete everything on your end and go dark for a few days. Way ahead of you. Good luck, Luke. You're going to need it. The line went dead. Lucas turned to find Evelyn staring at nothing, her face a mask of shock and grief. They killed her. They killed my mother to get control of her company. We don't know that for certain, Diana said, but her tone was gentle. What we know is that powerful people wanted Halcyon and were willing to wait years to get it. Whether they actively caused Elizabeth Cross's death or simply exploited it, the result is the same. They've been playing a long game, and you're the final piece. The marriage to Richard, the merger, my father's pressure. Evelyn's voice was hollow. It was never about family or legacy. It was always about turning Halcyon into a weapon. Lucas guided her to the couch. We're going to expose them, all of them. But first you need to breathe. How can I breathe when my mother might have been murdered? When my own father might have been part of it? Tears streamed down Evelyn's face, the first crack in her composure since this began. She was everything to me, everything good about Halcyon, everything worth fighting for. And they just took her. Diana knelt in front of Evelyn, her usually hard features softening slightly. Listen to me. Grief is a luxury you can't afford right now. Later, when you're safe, you can fall apart. You can scream and cry and rage at the universe. But right now, the best way to honor your mother is to destroy the people who destroyed her. Can you do that? Evelyn wiped her eyes roughly. Yes. Then let's get to work. Diana stood and returned to her laptop. Sarah's files are coming through now. Lucas, I need you to analyze the communications patterns. Look for weak links, people we can turn, or pressure. Evelyn, I need you to think about anyone at Halcyon who is loyal to your mother, people who might help us if they knew what was really happening. Evelyn took a shaky breath. Victoria Chen. My COO. She worked directly with my mother for 3 years before she died. They were close, almost like family. Can she be trusted? I thought everyone could be trusted 48 hours ago. Now, I don't know anything. Evelyn's voice steadied with effort. But if anyone at Halcyon still believes in my mother's vision, it's Victoria. Diana pulled up Victoria Chen's profile. Education, employment history, financial records. No obvious red flags. No connection to Meridian or Cordova Industries. Her loyalty seems genuine. So we bring her in? Lucas asked. Not yet. First we verify she's not compromised. If she is, we've just tipped our hand. Diana typed rapidly. I'm going to have someone watch her for the next 12 hours. If she's clean, we make contact. If she's not, we find another ally. Lucas's phone buzzed with a message from Tommy. You need to see this. Now. He opened the attached file and his stomach dropped. It was a police report filed an hour ago, a break-in at his apartment building. Someone had forced the lock on his door, searched his apartment, and left everything just slightly disturbed. The kind of search professionals did when they wanted intelligence without alerting their target. They've been here, Lucas said quietly. Someone searched my apartment. Diana's head snapped up. When? Report says between noon and 1 p.m., right after we started making calls. Lucas checked the building's security footage through a neighbor's shared access. 3 men in maintenance uniforms entering his building, leaving 20 minutes later with tool bags that looked heavier than when they arrived. They took my computer, my backup drives, anything with digital storage. Looking for connections to Evelyn, Diana said. They know she's with someone. They're trying to figure out who. Did they find anything? Evelyn asked. No, I don't keep personal information on any device. Everything important is either memorized or stored in physical locations they don't know about. Lucas watched the footage again, studying the men's movements. Professional, efficient, careful. But they know I exist now. They know someone helped Evelyn disappear. Then we're on borrowed time. Diana started packing her equipment. We move now, not tonight. Grab whatever you absolutely need and nothing else. We're out of here in 10 minutes. Lucas thought about Mia, still at school for another 2 hours. I need to get my daughter. No. You pick up your daughter on schedule, same as always. Any deviation from routine flags you as suspicious. Mrs. Chen picks her up, brings her home, everything normal. Then tonight, after dark, you move both of them somewhere safe. I'm not leaving Mia in an apartment they've already searched. They're not coming back today. They got what they came for, your devices. They'll spend tonight analyzing them, looking for connections. That gives you until tomorrow morning. Diana's voice was firm. If you panic and grab your daughter early, you confirm their suspicions. Play it normal, play it calm, and buy us the time we need. Lucas wanted to argue, wanted to scoop up Mia and run, but Diana was right. Panic got people killed. Routine kept them invisible. Okay, he said finally. Normal schedule. But tomorrow morning, first thing, Mia and I disappear. Agreed. Now let's move. Diana handed Evelyn a jacket. We're going out the back, through the fire escape. There's a car waiting 2 blocks over. Once we're mobile, we're harder to track. They gathered minimal belongings. Lucas's emergency cash stash, Evelyn's phone in airplane mode, Diana's duffel of weapons and equipment. Everything else stayed behind, part of the normal life Lucas was about to abandon for the second time in 3 years. The fire escape was rusty but functional. Diana went first, scanning the alley below for threats. Lucas followed with Evelyn between them, using his body to shield her from any sightlines. 3 years of soft living hadn't completely erased his tactical training. The alley was empty except for dumpsters and afternoon shadows. Diana led them through a maze of back streets, changing direction frequently, doubling back twice to check for tails. Lucas watched their 6, looking for the telltale signs of surveillance. The same face twice, cars that matched their pace. Anyone paying too much attention. Nothing. Either they were clean or the surveillance was better than he could detect. The car was a nondescript Honda Civic, the kind that disappeared in traffic. Diana had Evelyn in the back seat with tinted windows within seconds. Lucas took the passenger seat and they pulled into traffic with the smooth anonymity of any other afternoon errand. Where exactly are we going? Evelyn asked. Somewhere they won't think to look. Diana navigated through Queens with practiced ease. An old friend owns a building in Jersey. Officially, it's condemned. Unofficially, it's a safe house for people who need to disappear. We'll have secure communications, defensible positions, and enough warning if anyone comes looking. Lucas watched the city slide past his window, thinking about Mia and the promise he'd made to always come home. For 3 years he'd kept that promise. Now he was breaking it for a woman he barely knew and a conspiracy that could get them all killed. Second thoughts? Diana asked, reading his expression. 1,000 of them. Good. Doubt keeps you sharp, certainty gets you dead. They drove in silence for 20 minutes, crossing into New Jersey as afternoon faded toward evening. The industrial area Diana navigated to was exactly as advertised. Abandoned warehouses, empty lots, the kind of neighborhood where nobody looked too closely at strangers. The building she pulled up to looked like it should have been demolished years ago. Broken windows, graffiti-covered walls, weeds growing through cracks in the pavement. But when Diana unlocked the heavy steel door, the interior was pristine. Reinforced walls, updated electrical, surveillance cameras covering every approach. "Welcome to the safe house," Diana said. "It's not pretty, but it's secure." The space was one large room with a bathroom and small kitchen area. Sleeping pallets lined one wall, computer equipment covered a table, and weapons racks held enough firepower to outfit a small team. Lucas had been in dozens of places like this over the years, temporary fortresses where scared people waited out whatever threatened them. "Make yourself comfortable," Diana told Evelyn. "You're going to be here for a while." Evelyn looked around the sparse room, so different from her penthouse apartment and corner office. "How long is a while?" "Until we have enough evidence to destroy everyone who's trying to control you. Could be days, could be weeks." Diana started setting up her surveillance equipment. "Depends how fast we work and how careful we need to be." Lucas checked the time, 3:47 p.m. Mia would be home in an hour. He needed to be there, needed to maintain the routine, needed to keep his daughter safe from the storm he'd brought into their lives. "I have to go," he said. "My daughter—" "Go," Diana interrupted. "Evelyn's safe here. I'll send you updates every 2 hours. You focus on your kid and maintaining cover. Tomorrow, we'll figure out next steps." Lucas hesitated at the door, looking back at Evelyn. She seemed small in the industrial space, vulnerable despite Diana's protection. "You're going to be okay." "I know. Diana's terrifying enough to scare off anyone." A faint smile crossed Evelyn's face. "Thank you, Lucas, for everything." He nodded and left before the weight of what they were doing could paralyze him. The drive back to Queens felt longer than the drive out, every red light an eternity, every passing car a potential threat. By the time he pulled up to his building, it was 4:52 p.m., 8 minutes before Mia's usual arrival home. Lucas climbed the stairs to his apartment, unlocked the door, and stepped into a space that had been violated. Everything looked normal at first glance, but he saw the tells. Books slightly out of order, drawers not quite closed, his coffee mug moved 2 inches to the left. They'd been thorough and professional, searching for anything that connected him to Evelyn Cross. He had 10 minutes before Mia arrived, 10 minutes to erase any remaining traces, to prepare the lies he'd need to tell, to become the simple janitor father, instead of the man who used to hunt people for a living. The coffee mug went back to its exact position. The books were reorganized, the drawers closed properly. By the time Mrs. Chen's voice echoed up the stairwell with Mia's laughter, the apartment looked exactly as it should. "Daddy!" Mia burst through the door with her usual hurricane energy, backpack flying, coat half off. "We made volcanoes in science today, with baking soda and vinegar, and Sophie's exploded everywhere, and Mrs. Martinez said it was the best volcano disaster she'd ever seen." Lucas caught her in a hug, breathing in the scent of her shampoo and the elementary school smell of paste and crayons. "That sounds amazing, sweetheart. Can we make a volcano at home, please? I promise I won't make it explode in the kitchen." "We'll see. How about homework first, then dinner, then maybe a small, controlled volcano?" Mia groaned but accepted the deal. She dumped her backpack and settled at the kitchen table with her math worksheet while Lucas started preparing dinner. Normal routine, normal evening. Nothing to suggest that his entire life was about to implode. Mrs. Chen appeared in the doorway. "Mr. Lucas, there were men here today. Said they were checking the building's electrical system. They asked about you." Lucas's blood ran cold, but he kept his voice casual. "What did they ask?" "Your schedule, where you work, if you have visitors. I told them you're a quiet man who works nights and takes good care of his daughter, nothing more." Her eyes were sharp with understanding. "They weren't electricians." "No, they weren't." "Are you in trouble?" Lucas thought about how to answer that. "I'm helping someone who is. It might get complicated." Mrs. Chen nodded slowly. "In my country, before I came here, I helped people too. People the government wanted to find. I know what complicated looks like." She glanced at Mia, happily working on her math. "That child needs her father. Whatever you're doing, don't forget that." "I won't. I promise." She left without another word, and Lucas returned to the surreal normalcy of helping Mia with fractions and making spaghetti for dinner. They ate together, cleaned up together, built a small volcano in the bathtub that actually didn't explode everywhere. Bedtime came with the usual ritual: teeth brushing, story reading, the kiss sequence on forehead, nose, and both cheeks. "Love you to the moon, Daddy." "Love you to the stars, sweetheart." He tucked her in and watched her drift towards sleep, thinking about the choice he'd made. He could walk away right now, tell Diana he was out, tell Evelyn to find someone else, return to the safety of invisibility. Mia would be safe. Their routine would continue. The simple life he'd built would remain intact, but Evelyn's mother was potentially murdered. Meridian Holdings was building a military-industrial empire, and somewhere in Manhattan, powerful people were hunting a woman whose only crime was refusing to be controlled. Lucas thought about the man he used to be, the one who protected people because it was right, not because it was convenient. That man had died with his wife, buried under grief and guilt and the weight of too many failures. But maybe, Lucas thought as he watched his daughter sleep, maybe that man could be resurrected one more time. Not to become who he was, but to become who Mia deserved. A father who stood up for what was right, even when it was dangerous. His phone buzzed with a message from Diana. "Victoria Chen is clean, meeting her tomorrow at 9 a.m. You should be there." Then a second message from Sarah. "Found something. Call me when you're alone." Lucas closed Mia's door and moved to the living room. He dialed Sarah's number and she answered immediately. "I found the smoking gun," she said without preamble. Encrypted communications between William Cross and Meridian Holdings dated 3 days before Elizabeth Cross's death. They're discussing timeline acceleration and the need for certain obstacles to be removed. Does it explicitly mention Elizabeth? No, but the next message, sent 2 days after her death, says, "Obstacle removed, proceeding as planned." Luke, this is conspiracy to commit murder. If we can prove it, we can destroy everyone involved. Lucas felt something cold and hard settle in his chest. "Can you trace the communications to specific people?" "I can trace them to William Cross and to a Meridian executive named Daniel Reeves. He's their head of special operations, former CIA Black Ops, exactly the kind of person who'd know how to make a heart attack look natural." "Send everything to Diana. She'll know what to do with it." "Already done." "Luke, be careful. These people are professionals. They've killed before and they won't hesitate to kill again." "Neither will I," Lucas said quietly. "Not if they threaten my daughter." He ended the call and sat in the dark living room, listening to the city sounds outside his window. Tomorrow morning, he'd meet with Diana and Victoria Chen. Tomorrow afternoon, he'd start planning how to expose Meridian Holdings and everyone involved in the conspiracy. Tomorrow night, he'd move Mia somewhere they could never find her. But tonight, he sat vigil over his sleeping daughter and made a different promise than the one he'd made 3 years ago. This time, he wouldn't run from danger. He'd run toward it. And he'd make sure that anyone who threatened his family understood exactly why people used to fear the name Lucas Hale. The next morning arrived too quickly. Lucas made pancakes again, walked Mia to Sophie's house for a playdate, and told Mrs. Chen he'd be gone most of the day. She nodded with understanding that needed no explanation. The drive to Jersey felt different in daylight, less dramatic, more mundane. Just another warehouse in another industrial area. But inside, Diana had transformed the space into a command center. 3 more computer screens had appeared overnight, along with a portable printer and what looked like enough coffee to fuel a small army. Evelyn sat at the table, looking tired but determined. She'd slept in her borrowed clothes and her hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail. Without the CEO armor of expensive suits and perfect styling, she looked younger and somehow more formidable. "Victoria's on her way," Diana said. "ETA 5 minutes. I've swept her for tracking devices. Had her change vehicles twice, and she's clean. But we're not telling her everything at once. We reveal information strategically, gauge her reactions, make sure she's really on our side." "And if she's not?" Evelyn asked. "Then she never leaves this building." Diana's voice was matter-of-fact. "Can't risk her reporting back to Meridian." A chill ran through the room. Lucas had forgotten how cold Diana could be when operational security demanded it. She wasn't cruel, just practical in ways that normal people couldn't comprehend. A car pulled up outside. Diana checked the surveillance feed and nodded. She's here. Alone, as instructed. Lucas, you stay back initially. Let Evelyn do the talking. Victoria Chen entered the warehouse with visible nervousness, her eyes adjusting to the dim interior. She was early 50s, elegant in the way of women who'd fought their way up corporate ladders, and her face flooded with relief when she saw Evelyn. "Thank God," Victoria breathed. "Evelyn, where have you been? The entire company is looking for you. Your father filed a missing person report. The police are investigating. The board is talking about emergency succession." "Victoria, I need you to listen carefully." Evelyn's voice was steady. "Everything you think you know about the past few months is a lie. My father, Meridian Holdings, Richard Cordova, they've been conspiring to take control of Halcyon. And I think they killed my mother to do it." Victoria went very still. "That's impossible. Elizabeth died of natural causes. The autopsy—" "There was no autopsy, just a cursory medical examination and a death certificate signed by a doctor who sits on Meridian's board." Evelyn gestured to the computer screen showing Sarah's findings. "We have evidence. Communications between my father and Meridian discussing obstacle removal, timeline acceleration, surveillance operations tracking my every move for 6 months." Victoria moved closer to the screens, reading with the speed of someone trained to absorb complex information quickly. Lucas watched her face carefully. The shock seemed genuine, the anger real, but he'd been fooled before. "This can't be real," Victoria whispered. "William loved Elizabeth. He loved the company more. And when my mother tried to limit his influence, when she started restructuring the board to protect Halcyon's values, she became an obstacle." Evelyn's voice cracked slightly. "They made her death look natural, then spent the next 4 years positioning me for a merger that would complete their plan." Victoria sank into a chair, staring at nothing. "The Cordova merger. I never understood why William was pushing it so hard. The financials don't support it, the cultural fit is terrible, but he kept insisting it was necessary for Halcyon's future." "It's necessary for Meridian's future," Diana interjected. "They want Halcyon's technology combined with Cordova's military contracts. It creates a private pipeline for defense innovation that bypasses government oversight." "And I'm the key to making it happen," Evelyn finished. "Marry Richard, merge the companies, let them transform my mother's legacy into a weapons factory." Victoria looked up with tears in her eyes. "Elizabeth would have burned Halcyon to the ground before letting that happen." "That's what I intend to do." Evelyn's voice was steel. "But I need help. I need someone inside Halcyon who can gather evidence, document the board's cooperation with Meridian, identify who's compromised and who's still loyal to my mother's vision." "You want me to spy on the company I've dedicated 8 years to?" "I want you to save the company from people who murdered its founder." Evelyn leaned forward. "Victoria, you worked with my mother. You know what she believed, what she built, what she wanted Halcyon to become. Are you going to let her killers destroy all of it?" A long silence filled the warehouse. Lucas could see Victoria wrestling with the enormity of what she was being asked to do. Corporate espionage against her own employer, betraying the board, risking everything she'd built. Finally, she looked up with hard determination. "What do you need?" Diana smiled grimly. "Now we're talking." Victoria Chen proved to be exactly the ally they needed. Within 48 hours, she'd compiled a devastating portfolio of evidence that painted a picture of corruption so deep it made Lucas's stomach turn. Board members receiving consulting fees from Meridian shell companies. Executive decisions that benefited Cordova Industries at Halcyon's expense. Communications showing William Cross had been systematically undermining his daughter's authority while positioning Richard Cordova as the inevitable successor. "This goes back further than Elizabeth's death," Victoria said during their third strategy session in the warehouse. She'd been working around the clock, sleeping maybe 4 hours a night, subsisting on coffee and righteous anger. "I found emails from 6 years ago where William was already discussing merger possibilities with Meridian. Elizabeth shut it down hard, threatened to divorce him if he didn't drop it." Evelyn looked up from the financial statements she'd been reviewing. "My mother threatened divorce?" "Multiple times, according to her private correspondence with the company's legal counsel. She knew William was compromised by his business failures. Meridian had bailed him out of 3 separate ventures that should have bankrupted him. She was trying to protect Halcyon from his influence." Victoria pulled up another document. Then she started the board restructuring process that would have legally separated William from any control over the company. 3 weeks later, she was dead. The words settled like lead weights. Lucas watched Evelyn's face cycle through grief, rage, and something colder, the hard calculation of someone planning revenge. "Can we prove he was involved in her death?" Evelyn asked quietly. Sarah's voice came through the laptop speaker. She'd been participating remotely, too paranoid to risk a physical meeting. "Not conclusively. The communications between William and Daniel Reeves are suggestive but not explicit. A good lawyer could argue it's coincidental timing." "What about the doctor who signed the death certificate?" Diana asked. She was cleaning a handgun while they talked, her attention split between the weapon and the conversation with practiced ease. "Dr. Marcus Brennan. He's on Meridian's medical advisory board, receives $200,000 annually in consulting fees, and signed Elizabeth's death certificate without conducting a full autopsy despite her young age and lack of documented heart problems." Sarah's typing was audible through the connection. "Suspicious as hell, but not proof of murder, just proof of negligence at best." Lucas had been studying the security footage from Halcyon's headquarters, mapping patrol patterns and identifying vulnerabilities. Now he looked up with an idea forming. What if we don't try to prove the murder? What if we focus on what we can prove, the conspiracy to control Halcyon through the merger? "We expose the merger as a hostile takeover disguised as a family union," Evelyn said slowly, following his logic. "Show the board how Meridian has been manipulating company decisions, how my father has been compromised, how Richard Cordova is just a puppet for military-industrial interests." "Exactly. We can't put William in prison for murder, but we can destroy his credibility and prevent the merger." Lucas gestured to the mountain of evidence Victoria had compiled. "This documentation shows clear breach of fiduciary duty, conflicts of interest, maybe even securities fraud. The board would have to act." Victoria nodded. "The board members who aren't compromised would have legal obligations to investigate. Even the ones who are compromised would have to distance themselves or risk criminal liability. And once the board starts investigating, the whole conspiracy falls apart," Diana added. "Meridian loses their inside access, Cordova loses the merger, William loses his influence. Everyone scatters to save themselves." Evelyn stood and walked to the warehouse window, looking out at the industrial wasteland beyond. "My father would be ruined. His reputation, his business relationships, everything he's built since my mother died." "He earned that ruin," Victoria said firmly. "Whether or not he actively killed Elizabeth, he exploited her death to betray everything she believed in. That deserves consequences." "I know." Evelyn's voice was barely audible. "I just never thought I'd be the one delivering them." Lucas understood the weight she was carrying. Destroying your own father, even one who deserved it, left scars that never fully healed. He'd carried similar scars since walking away from his old life, since choosing invisibility over the violence that had defined him. But some battles couldn't be avoided. Some enemies couldn't be reasoned with, and some truths were worth the cost of speaking them, no matter how much pain they caused. "When do we move?" he asked Diana. "The board meets next Wednesday for their monthly strategic session. That's 5 days from now." Diana had already started planning, her tactical mind organizing the operation like a military strike. "We need to be ready to present everything: documents, recordings, witness testimony from Victoria. Make it so airtight that the board has no choice but to act immediately." "What about security?" Evelyn asked. "The moment we show up at Halcyon, Meridian will know. They'll have people watching the building." "Let them watch," Lucas said. "We're not sneaking in. We're walking through the front door with enough evidence to destroy everyone who stands in our way." Sarah's voice cut through the confidence. "That's assuming you survive long enough to reach the boardroom. Meridian has already proven they're willing to kill to protect this operation. The second you surface publicly, you become a target." "I'm already a target," Evelyn countered. "At least this way I'm shooting back." Over the next 4 days, they worked with the intensity of people who knew their window was closing. Sarah built a digital fortress around the evidence, creating redundant backups stored in multiple locations with dead man switches that would release everything to the press if anything happened to them. Victoria prepared her testimony, rehearsing answers to every question the board might ask. Diana mapped security protocols for getting Evelyn safely in and out of Halcyon's headquarters. And Lucas divided his time between helping coordinate the operation and maintaining the fiction of his normal life. Every morning he made pancakes for Mia. Every afternoon he prepared for war. Every night he tucked his daughter into bed and wondered if he'd live long enough to see her 8th birthday. On Tuesday night, 24 hours before the board meeting, Lucas sat in the warehouse going over the plan one final time when his phone rang with a number he didn't recognize. "Mr. Hale." The voice was cultured, confident, and completely unfamiliar. "My name is Daniel Reeves. I believe we should talk." Every nerve in Lucas's body went on alert. Daniel Reeves, Meridian's head of special operations, the man Sarah had linked to communications about removing obstacles, the man who might have killed Elizabeth Cross. Lucas caught Diana's eye and gestured. She immediately started tracing the call while he kept Reeves talking. "I'm not sure we have anything to discuss," Lucas said carefully. "On the contrary, I think we have a great deal to discuss. Specifically, your daughter Mia. 7 years old, attends PS 122, friends with a girl named Sophie Patterson. Quite fond of dinosaurs and making volcanoes, from what I understand." The warehouse went deathly quiet. Lucas felt his blood turn to ice, but his voice stayed level. "If you touch her, please, Mr. Hale, I'm not a monster. I don't threaten children. I simply want you to understand that your actions have consequences beyond yourself." Reeves's tone was almost sympathetic. "You've become involved in something that doesn't concern you. A family matter, really, between William Cross and his daughter. Your intervention has been noted, and I must say quite impressive for a man who's supposedly been cleaning toilets for 3 years. Get to the point. The point is this. Tomorrow's board meeting cannot happen. Ms. Cross will not be attending. The evidence you've compiled will not be presented, and you will return to your quiet life with your daughter, grateful that I'm a reasonable man willing to offer you an exit. And if I refuse, then I stop being reasonable." Reeves let the threat hang. "Mr. Hale, I've researched your background quite thoroughly. You were very good at what you did. But you've been retired for 3 years, out of practice, soft from domestic life. I have a team of 12 operatives, all currently active, all trained to the same standards you once were. You cannot protect everyone. Not Evelyn Cross, not Victoria Chen, not Sarah Reeves, and certainly not a 7-year-old girl who depends on you coming home every night." Lucas's hand tightened on the phone so hard the plastic creaked. Diana had finished the trace and was already making calls, coordinating protection for Mia. Evelyn was watching with barely controlled panic. "Here's my counteroffer," Lucas said quietly. "You leave my daughter alone. You leave everyone involved in this alone. And maybe, just maybe, I don't spend the rest of my life hunting down every person responsible for threatening her." Reeves laughed, genuinely amused. "You think you frighten me? You're one man with everything to lose. I'm a ghost with nothing but resources and time." "That's where you're wrong. I already lost everything that mattered 3 years ago. My wife, my son, my entire world. Mia is all I have left, which means I have absolutely nothing left to lose." Lucas's voice dropped to something colder than he'd heard from himself in years. "You threaten her, and I don't care about evidence or trials or justice. I care about making sure you understand what happens when you back a dead man into a corner." Silence on the line. Then more cautiously. "You're bluffing." "Am I? You researched my background. You know what I was capable of when I had rules, when I had oversight, when I cared about collateral damage. Imagine what I'm capable of now, when the only thing I care about is keeping one 7-year-old girl safe." "This is a mistake, Mr. Hale." "Probably, but it's my mistake to make." Lucas ended the call and immediately dialed a number he'd sworn never to use again. The man who answered had a voice like gravel in old cigarettes. "Lucas Hale. Heard you were dead. 4th person this week. Marcus, I need a favor. Must be a hell of a favor if you're calling me after 3 years of radio silence. I need my daughter protected. Tonight. Best people you have, whatever it costs." Marcus was silent for a moment. "Who's the threat?" "Daniel Reeves, Meridian Holdings. He just threatened Mia directly." A sharp intake of breath. "Jesus, Luke, Reeves doesn't make empty threats. If he's got eyes on your kid..." I know, that's why I'm calling you. I need people I can trust, people who won't flinch if this gets ugly. It's already ugly. Reeves plays for keeps. More silence, then, I've got 2 operators in New York. Former Delta, solid as they come. I can have them on your daughter within the hour. Do it. And Marcus? If anything happens to her, if Reeves or anyone from Meridian gets within 50 feet, I know, Luke. I'll tell them to shoot first and apologize never. Papers rustled. This is going to cost you everything you've saved. I don't care. Just keep her safe. Lucas ended the call and found everyone in the warehouse staring at him. Evelyn looked stricken, Victoria shocked, and Diana grimly approving. They threatened Mia, Lucas said, though everyone had heard. That changes everything. We should call off the board meeting, Evelyn said immediately. Lucas, I can't let your daughter pay for my problems. We'll find another way. There is no other way. We either expose Meridian tomorrow, or we spend the rest of our lives looking over our shoulders, waiting for them to make good on their threats. Lucas pulled up the security feeds from his apartment building. Mia will be protected. The best operators money can buy are about to become her shadows. But we're not backing down. They'll escalate, Diana warned. Reeves doesn't make threats lightly. If we go ahead with the board meeting, he'll try to stop us, violently, if necessary. Let him try. Lucas felt something old and dangerous stirring in his chest, the part of himself he'd buried 3 years ago. I spent 3 years running from who I was. Maybe it's time to remember. Victoria cleared her throat nervously. I hate to add more bad news, but I just received a message from my assistant. William Cross called an emergency board meeting for tomorrow morning, 9 a.m., mandatory attendance for all members. That's 3 hours before our scheduled presentation, Evelyn said. He knows. Someone told him we're planning something. Or he's making a preemptive move, Diana suggested. Push through the merger approval before we can present our evidence. Lucas studied the timeline. Can he do that? Approve a major merger without you present? Victoria nodded reluctantly. If he can convince the board that Evelyn is incapacitated or unfit to serve as CEO, they can vote to replace her temporarily. Then the new CEO, almost certainly someone Meridian controls, approves the merger. So we've got 12 hours before everything we've worked for becomes irrelevant. Evelyn started pacing. We need to get that evidence to the board before William's meeting starts. Too risky, Diana said. If we send it electronically, Meridian's security will intercept it. If we send it physically, they'll intercept the courier. The only way to guarantee the board sees the evidence is to deliver it in person. Which means walking into a building that Meridian controls, surrounded by their security, with Daniel Reeves actively hunting us. Sarah's voice was tight with stress. That's not a plan. That's suicide. Lucas had been studying the Halcyon headquarters schematics while they talked, his tactical training clicking into place like muscle memory. Not if we change the battlefield. Diana, what's the maximum occupancy for Halcyon's 42nd floor conference room? 75 people, according to fire codes. Why? Because we're not walking into an ambush. We're creating a public event too big for Meridian to disrupt without exposing themselves. Lucas started sketching on a whiteboard. Victoria, you still have access to the company's emergency communication system? Yes, but it's only supposed to be used for genuine emergencies. This qualifies. Tomorrow morning at 8 a.m., you send a company-wide notification announcing a special presentation by Evelyn Cross regarding Halcyon's future. You invite every employee, every stakeholder, every person with even a minor interest in the company. Understanding dawned on Evelyn's face. We turn it into a public forum. Meridian can't stop us without causing a scene that would raise questions they can't answer. Exactly. We fill that conference room with witnesses. Then Evelyn presents the evidence not just to the board, but to everyone. The corruption, the manipulation, the conspiracy, all of it exposed in front of hundreds of people. And we live stream it, Sarah added, catching the vision. Social media, company channels, everywhere. Make it impossible to suppress or deny. Victoria was already typing on her laptop. I can set up the notification system, but William will see it. He'll know we're coming. He'll have time to prepare a counter-strategy. Good. Let him prepare. Let him waste resources trying to stop something he can't stop. Lucas turned to Diana. How many operators can you bring in on short notice? For protection detail during a high-profile event. 6, maybe 8 if I pull in favors. Diana was already making calculations. But they're expensive, Luke. We're talking about $20,000 per operator for a single day. Do it. Bill it to Halcyon. Lucas looked at Evelyn. Can the company cover that? The company can cover whatever this takes. My mother built Halcyon with a war chest for exactly these kinds of fights. Evelyn's voice was steel. She knew eventually someone would try to steal it. She just didn't know it would be her own husband. The next 6 hours were a blur of preparation. Victoria sent the company-wide notification at midnight, carefully worded to create maximum curiosity without revealing too much. Sarah set up the live stream infrastructure, creating redundant systems that would keep broadcasting even if Halcyon's primary servers went down. Diana coordinated with her network of operators, building a security perimeter that could protect Evelyn from the moment she entered Halcyon's building until the moment she left. And Lucas prepared for violence. He cleaned weapons he hadn't touched in 3 years, checked ammunition counts, rehearsed tactical movements that muscle memory hadn't quite forgotten. Diana watched him work with the critical eye of a former instructor. You're rusty, she observed. Reload time is slow, stance is sloppy. I'm a janitor, remember? Not a soldier. Tomorrow you're going to need to be both. She handed him a ceramic knife, the kind that passed through metal detectors. Keep this on you. If things go bad, if Reeves's people get through our perimeter, you need to be ready. Lucas took the knife, feeling its weight, remembering the last time he'd carried a weapon with the intent to use it. I don't want Mia to grow up with a father who kills people. Then make sure those people don't give you a choice. Diana's voice softened slightly. Marcus's team is good, Luke. Mia will be safe tomorrow. Focus on keeping yourself alive. At 4 a.m., Lucas left the warehouse and drove back to Queens. Marcus's operators were already in position, one in a car across from his building, another in the apartment next door that Marcus had somehow acquired on zero notice. They were invisible, professional, and Lucas trusted them with his daughter's life because he had no other choice. He unlocked his apartment quietly and checked on Mia. She was sleeping peacefully, clutching her stuffed octopus, completely unaware that her father was about to walk into a war zone. Lucas kissed her forehead gently and whispered the same promise he made every night. Love you to the stars, sweetheart. Always. Mrs. Chen was waiting in the kitchen when he emerged. I heard you come in. Are you ready for what comes next? No, but I'm doing it anyway. She nodded with understanding. In my country, we had a saying, the most dangerous person in a fight is the one protecting something worth dying for. Tomorrow, you protect many things. That makes you very dangerous. I hope so, because the people I'm fighting are just as dangerous and have no conscience. But they have nothing worth dying for. That is their weakness. She stood and touched his arm. Come home to your daughter, Mr. Lucas. That is all I ask. I'll do my best. At 6 a.m., Lucas showered, dressed in the only suit he owned, purchased for job interviews 3 years ago and barely worn since, and prepared to become someone other than the invisible janitor. The face looking back from the mirror was leaner than he remembered, harder, with lines around the eyes that came from too many sleepless nights and too much grief carried alone. But underneath the softness of 3 years of domestic life, the old Lucas Hale was still there, waiting, ready. At 7 a.m., Diana picked him up in a nondescript SUV with reinforced panels and bulletproof glass. Evelyn sat in the back seat wearing a gray suit that Diana had somehow acquired, looking every inch the CEO she was born to be. Victoria was already at Halcyon, making final preparations and ensuring the conference room was set up properly. The drive into Manhattan felt surreal. Morning commuters filled the streets, oblivious to the corporate warfare about to unfold. Lucas watched the city wake up and thought about all the invisible battles fought in boardrooms and back alleys, the quiet wars that shaped the world without ever making headlines. Until today. Today would make headlines. You ready? Diana asked as they approached Halcyon's headquarters. Lucas checked the ceramic knife in his jacket pocket and thought about Mia sleeping safely under Marcus's protection. Let's finish this. They parked 3 blocks away and walked the final distance on foot, surrounded by Diana's operators forming a loose protective perimeter. Evelyn walked in the center, chin up, shoulders back, every inch the woman who'd built an empire before 30. Halcyon's lobby was already filling with employees responding to Victoria's notification. The curiosity was palpable. What could be so important that their CEO was making an unscheduled public presentation? Whispers followed Evelyn as she crossed to the elevators, recognition spreading through the crowd. Is that Ms. Cross? I thought she was missing. What's going on? The elevator ride to the 42nd floor felt endless. Lucas watched the numbers climb and prepared himself for whatever waited above. Diana had her hand near her concealed weapon, scanning for threats with the hypervigilance of someone who expected violence. The conference room was packed beyond capacity. Employees lined the walls, board members sat at the main table looking confused and irritated at the irregular summons, and security personnel lurked near the exits. Lucas spotted them immediately. Too alert, too focused, definitely not regular Halcyon security. Meridian's people. Reeves's operators. William Cross sat at the head of the table, his face darkening when he saw Evelyn enter. What is the meaning of this? I called a private board meeting, not a company-wide circus. The circus started months ago, Father. I'm just shining a light on the performers. Evelyn walked to the front of the room with Victoria beside her. The massive screens behind them flickered to life, showing the Halcyon logo and the live stream viewer count already climbing past 10,000. Evelyn, you need to leave immediately. You're not well, you've been missing for days, and the board has serious concerns about your fitness to lead. The board is about to have serious concerns about your fitness to remain on it. Evelyn nodded to Victoria, who pulled up the first slide. For the past 6 months, I've been under surveillance by security firms hired through shell companies controlled by Meridian Holdings. This surveillance was comprehensive. My phone calls, emails, physical movements, every aspect of my life monitored without my knowledge or consent. Murmurs rippled through the room. The board members leaned forward, some looking genuinely surprised, others carefully neutral. Lucas watched their faces, cataloging reactions, identifying who knew and who didn't. Victoria advanced to the next slide showing financial transfers. These surveillance operations were paid for using funds that trace back to William Cross, the same William Cross who sits on this board and has been advocating for a merger with Cordova Industries against his daughter's wishes. This is absurd, William sputtered, but his face had gone pale. These are fabricated documents, desperate lies from a daughter who can't handle the pressure of leadership. These are bank records, Father, verified by 3 independent forensic accountants. Would you like me to continue? Evelyn's voice was ice. Or should we skip ahead to the communications between you and Daniel Reeves, discussing the removal of obstacles 3 days before my mother died? The room went deathly silent. Every eye turned to William Cross, who looked like he'd been physically struck. You're accusing me of murder? I'm accusing you of conspiracy. Whether that conspiracy included my mother's death or simply exploited it, the evidence will show. Evelyn pulled up the encrypted communications Sarah had found. These messages discuss timeline acceleration, obstacle removal, and proceeding as planned. 2 days after my mother's sudden death, you sent confirmation that obstacles had been removed. Board members were standing now, voices rising in shock and anger. The live stream viewer count had passed 50,000. Lucas saw Meridian security personnel moving toward the exits, hands going to concealed weapons, and he tensed. Diana saw it too. She stepped forward, her own operators materializing from the crowd, creating a human barrier between Evelyn and any potential threats. You can't prove any of this, William said, but his voice had lost its authority. These communications could mean anything. They could, which is why we've provided the full documentation to the SEC, the FBI, and the Manhattan District Attorney's Office. Victoria pulled up the final slide showing official government letterhead. Criminal investigations have been opened into Meridian Holdings, Cordova Industries, and several members of this board for securities fraud, conspiracy, and potential homicide. The room erupted. Board members shouting questions, employees pressing closer to see the screens, security personnel receiving urgent communications through earpieces. In the chaos, Lucas saw one of Meridian's operators moving with purpose toward Evelyn, hand reaching inside his jacket. Lucas moved faster. He intercepted the man in 3 strides, grabbing his wrist before the concealed weapon could clear leather. The operator's eyes widened in recognition. He knew Lucas, or knew of him, knew he wasn't just some janitor playing bodyguard. Don't, Lucas said quietly. Not here. Not now. Not ever. The operator calculated his odds against Lucas and Diana's team and decided survival was more important than duty. He retreated toward the exit, and 2 more Meridian operatives followed. Daniel Reeves was cutting his losses. At the front of the room, Evelyn was addressing the board directly. I'm calling for an immediate vote to remove William Cross from this board and from any position of authority within Halcyon Group. Furthermore, I'm recommending we terminate all discussions with Cordova Industries and launch an internal investigation into any board member who benefited from Meridian's manipulation. You don't have the authority, William said desperately. I'm still your father, still a member of this board. You're a criminal facing federal investigation. Evelyn's voice was final. And this board needs to decide right now whether they're complicit in your crimes or victims of your deception. The vote was unanimous. 12 board members, some with tears in their eyes, some with faces hard as stone, all raising their hands to remove William Cross from every position of power he'd held at Halcyon. Security escorted him from the room in silence. He didn't look at Evelyn as he left, didn't acknowledge his daughter or the company his wife had built. He simply walked out with his shoulders slumped, a broken man facing the consequences of his betrayal. Evelyn watched him go, and Lucas saw something shift in her expression, grief mixing with relief, pain mixing with strength. She'd lost her father, but saved her mother's legacy. It was a trade that would hurt for the rest of her life. But it was the right trade. The presentation concluded with Victoria outlining next steps: the internal investigation, the cooperation with law enforcement, the restructuring of the board to prevent future manipulation. The live stream had peaked at 200,000 viewers, and the story was already spreading across news networks. Meridian Holdings stock had dropped 17% in the 30 minutes since the presentation began. Cordova Industries was scrambling to distance themselves from the merger talks. Daniel Reeves had vanished, his entire operation dissolving like smoke now that the conspiracy was exposed. They'd won. Lucas stood at the back of the conference room and felt the weight of 3 years lift from his shoulders. He'd kept his promise to Evelyn. He'd protected someone who needed protection. He'd remembered who he was before grief and guilt had made him invisible, and he was still alive to go home to his daughter. Diana appeared at his elbow. Hell of a thing, watching you work again. Reminded me why I recruited you in the first place. This was a one-time deal. Sure it was. She smiled knowingly. Marcus wants to talk to you, says he's got a proposition. I'm done with propositions. I'm done with operations. I'm going home to make pancakes and help with homework. We'll see. Diana handed him a card with just a phone number. Keep this anyway, just in case you change your mind. Lucas pocketed the card and pushed through the dispersing crowd to where Evelyn stood with Victoria, both women looking exhausted but victorious. Evelyn saw him approaching and her professional mask slipped for just a moment. Thank you, she said simply, for everything. For seeing me when I needed to be seen. For believing me when you had no reason to. For risking your life when you had every reason to run. You would have done the same. Maybe. But you actually did it. She glanced at the live stream viewer count, still climbing. What happens now? Now you rebuild Halcyon the way your mother intended, without corrupt board members, without military-industrial entanglements, without anyone trying to control you through fear. And you? Lucas thought about Mia waking up in their apartment, probably wondering where her father was. Thought about the promise he'd made to always come home. Thought about the simple, quiet life that was waiting for him just across the river in Queens. Now I go back to being invisible, he said. It's where I belong. Evelyn nodded with understanding. If you ever need anything, anything at all, you call me. I owe you a debt I can never repay. You don't owe me anything. Just take care of Halcyon. That's payment enough. He left without saying goodbye, slipping through the crowd with the practiced invisibility of someone who'd perfected the art of not being noticed. Diana's operators had already dispersed, melting back into whatever shadows they'd emerged from. Within minutes, Lucas was just another man in a suit walking through Manhattan's morning rush, completely unremarkable, totally forgettable, exactly how he wanted it. The drive back to Queens felt longer than the drive in, probably because adrenaline was fading and exhaustion was setting in. Lucas parked 3 blocks from his building out of habit, then walked the final distance, checking for surveillance, for threats, for any sign that Meridian's people were still interested in him. Nothing. They'd abandoned their operation completely, focusing on damage control and legal defense instead of revenge. Marcus's operators were gone from their positions, replaced by a simple text message. Package secure. No incidents. You're clear. Lucas climbed the stairs to his apartment and found Mrs. Chen waiting outside his door with Mia, who was dressed for school and bouncing with impatience. "Daddy, you're late. We're going to miss the bus." Lucas scooped her up in a hug that was probably too tight, breathing in the scent of her strawberry shampoo and the simple reality of her presence. "Sorry, sweetheart. Work ran long." "Did you clean a really big mess?" "The biggest mess I've ever seen, but it's all clean now." Mrs. Chen met his eyes with knowing understanding. "Everything is settled?" "Everything's settled." "Good. Then I will see you this evening for the regular schedule." Lucas walked Mia to the bus stop, kissed her goodbye with the usual ritual, and watched her climb aboard with Sophie, both girls already chattering about some elementary school drama that seemed impossibly important and wonderfully trivial. Then he returned to his apartment, locked all 3 locks, and finally let himself feel the full weight of what had just happened. He'd survived. Mia was safe. Evelyn had won. And Lucas Hale could go back to being nobody, invisible and unremarkable and exactly where he chose to be. Except now he knew something he hadn't known before. That invisibility was a choice, not a prison. That he could step back into the light when needed and return to the shadows when the job was done. That the man he used to be wasn't dead, just dormant, waiting for moments when quiet strength mattered more than loud violence. The janitor's uniform hung in his closet, ready for tonight's shift. The ceramic knife sat on his kitchen counter, a reminder of battles fought and survived. And somewhere across the river, Evelyn Cross was rebuilding an empire while Victoria Chen exposed every remaining thread of Meridian's conspiracy. But here in Queens, in a small apartment with dinosaur drawings on the walls and a broken toaster that needed exactly 30 seconds of pressure, Lucas Hale was exactly who he needed to be. A father. A protector. An invisible man who'd learned that the greatest strength wasn't in being seen, but in choosing when to be visible and when to disappear. His phone buzzed with a message from Evelyn. "The board just approved a security consulting contract. I told them I knew the perfect person for the job. Position is yours if you want it." Lucas looked at the message for a long time, thinking about what it would mean to step back into that world permanently. The money would be better. The work would matter. He could stop mopping floors and start using skills he'd spent 12 years developing. But he'd also stop being home when Mia woke up, stop making pancakes every morning, stop being the present, available father he'd promised to become. He typed a reply. "Thank you, but I already have a job, one that lets me be home when it matters." Evelyn's response came immediately. "I understand. The offer stands if you ever change your mind." And Lucas? "Thank you for reminding me what it means to have integrity." Lucas set down his phone and looked around his small apartment. Tomorrow he'd return to the night shift. Tomorrow he'd push his cleaning cart through Halcyon's empty floors and pretend he hadn't just saved the company from destruction. Tomorrow he'd go back to being invisible. But tonight, he'd make dinner for Mia. He'd help with homework. He'd read bedtime stories and perform the kiss ritual and promise to love her to the stars. Because that's what fathers did. Not the ones who saved the world, but the ones who saved the small, precious moments that made life worth living. And Lucas Hale had finally learned which kind of hero he wanted to be. 3 months later, Lucas stood in the kitchen of a house he'd never imagined owning, flipping pancakes while autumn sunlight streamed through windows that overlooked a quiet Brooklyn street. The house wasn't large. 3 bedrooms, a small yard, nothing that would turn heads, but it was theirs. Paid for in cash from money Evelyn had insisted wasn't a payment, but a gesture, a way of saying thank you that couldn't be refused. "It's an investment in Halcyon's future security consultant," she'd said when Lucas protested. "You'll work for us part-time on your terms, from wherever you want to live. Consider the house a signing bonus." He'd accepted because Mia deserved a yard to play in, because Mrs. Chen deserved to retire comfortably with the generous pension Evelyn had somehow arranged, and because Lucas was learning that accepting help wasn't the same as accepting charity. "Daddy, you're burning them!" Mia's voice pulled him from his thoughts. She was right. The pancakes had gone from golden to suspiciously dark, while he'd been lost in memory. "So I am." Lucas scraped the casualties onto a plate. Guess we're having extra crispy pancakes this morning. Extra crispy means burned, Mia informed him with the brutal honesty of 8-year-olds everywhere. She'd had a birthday last month, a party in their new backyard with Sophie and 12 other kids running wild while Lucas manned the grill and tried not to think about how close he'd come to missing this moment entirely. Then I'll make new ones. You want to help? She climbed onto the step stool beside him, the same one from their old apartment, and together they made a fresh batch. It was their Sunday morning ritual now, one of dozens that had survived the move from Queens to Brooklyn, from the old life to whatever this new one was becoming. The doorbell rang at exactly 9 o'clock. Lucas wiped his hands and opened it to find Evelyn Cross standing on his porch wearing jeans and a sweater, looking more relaxed than he'd seen her in the 3 months since the board meeting. Her hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, no makeup, no armor of designer suits and corporate authority, just a woman who'd finally learned to exist outside the empire she'd inherited. "Morning," she said, holding up a bag from the bakery down the street. "I brought croissants. Figured I should contribute something to breakfast since I keep inviting myself over." "You're always welcome." Lucas stepped aside to let her in. "Mia's helping with pancakes, which means we'll have enough to feed an army." Evelyn followed him to the kitchen and immediately got absorbed into Mia's orbit. Over the past 3 months, an unlikely friendship had formed between the 8-year-old and the 29-year-old CEO. Evelyn showed up most Sunday mornings, helping with pancakes, or playing board games, or simply existing in the comfortable chaos of a family home. She never talked about work unless Lucas asked, never treated Mia like anything other than a complete person deserving of real conversation. "Miss Evelyn, we're learning about space in school," Mia announced, pouring batter with intense concentration. "Did you know that if you cry in space, your tears just stick to your face because there's no gravity?" "I did not know that. That sounds uncomfortable." "Very uncomfortable. That's why astronauts have to be brave." Mia looked up seriously. "Are you brave, Miss Evelyn?" Evelyn glanced at Lucas, something complicated crossing her face. "I'm trying to be. Your dad's teaching me." "Daddy's the bravest person I know. He's not scared of anything." Lucas felt his throat tighten. If only she knew how terrified he'd been during those dark days, how close he'd come to losing everything that mattered. But that was the gift of childhood. Believing your parents were invincible right up until the moment you learned they weren't. They ate breakfast together at the kitchen table, sticky with syrup and warm with laughter. Evelyn told Mia about the new innovation lab Halcyon was building, how it would focus on clean energy and medical technology instead of defense contracts. Mia told Evelyn about the volcano project that was apparently happening again in school, only bigger this time. "We're going to make it erupt for the science fair with real lava. Well, not real lava, but it's going to look real." "That sounds spectacular and potentially messy," Evelyn said. "Will I get an invitation to this volcano demonstration?" "Obviously, you're practically family." The words hung in the air for a moment. Evelyn's eyes went bright, and she looked away quickly, clearing her throat. Lucas understood. She'd lost her mother, destroyed her relationship with her father, and walked away from the toxic social circles that had defined her life. Family was something she was rebuilding from scratch, one Sunday morning pancake at a time. After breakfast, while Mia worked on homework at the kitchen table, Lucas and Evelyn moved to the small porch with fresh coffee. The neighborhood was quiet, families emerging for weekend errands, the ordinary rhythm of lives being lived without crisis or conspiracy. "I heard from the Manhattan DA yesterday," Evelyn said quietly. "They're moving forward with charges against my father. Conspiracy, securities fraud, obstruction of justice. Daniel Reeves is still missing, probably fled the country, but they have enough evidence to proceed without him." Lucas sipped his coffee. "How do you feel about that?" "I don't know. Relieved? Sad? Angry that it came to this?" She stared at her mug. "He's going to prison, Lucas. My father, the man who taught me to ride a bike and showed me how to read a balance sheet, is going to spend the rest of his life in federal prison. He made his choices. I know, and I made mine. Doesn't make it easier." She looked up at him. "Do you ever regret it? Helping me, getting involved, risking Mia?" Lucas thought about the question carefully. "I regret that it was necessary. I regret that people like your father and Reeves exist. but I don't regret helping you. That was the right choice, even when it was dangerous. Victoria says I should write a book, tell the whole story, expose how deep the corruption went. She thinks it would help other people being manipulated by powerful interests. What do you think? I think I'm tired of living in the past. I want to focus on the future. Evelyn's voice strengthened. Halcyon's clean now. The board is full of people who actually believe in my mother's vision. We're launching 3 new initiatives focused on sustainability and medical innovation. For the first time since Mom died, I feel like I'm building something instead of just protecting it. That's good. That's what she would have wanted. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the neighborhood wake up around them. A couple walked past with a dog. Kids rode bikes down the street. Somewhere nearby, someone was grilling despite it being barely 10 in the morning. I'm seeing someone, Evelyn said suddenly. A therapist. Victoria recommended her. We're working through everything that happened, the surveillance, the conspiracy, my mother's death, the realization that I can't trust my own judgment about people. That's brave. That's necessary. I spent so long being CEO, being in control, being the person everyone looked to for answers. I forgot how to be just Evelyn. She smiled slightly. Your daughter reminded me, the way she just exists, completely herself, no performance required. I want to be more like that. Mia would be honored to know she's a role model for a Fortune 500 CEO. She should be. She's got something most executives never learn: authenticity. Evelyn set down her coffee. Speaking of which, I have something to ask you, and you can absolutely say no. Lucas waited. Halcyon is creating a new position, Director of Personal Security and Threat Assessment. It's part-time, consultant basis. You set your own hours and work from wherever you want. The job is to review our security protocols, assess potential threats to key personnel, and basically make sure what happened to me never happens to anyone else at the company. Evelyn, before you say no, hear me out. It's 20 hours a week maximum. You'd work mostly from home, occasional meetings in Manhattan, but nothing that interferes with Mia's schedule. The salary is $200,000 annually, full benefits, and you'd have complete autonomy over how you structure the work. Lucas stared at her. That's twice what I made in my old career. You're twice as good as anyone I could hire. Plus, you already saved the company once. This is just making it official. She leaned forward. Lucas, you're wasted pushing a mop. I know you value the simplicity, the routine, being present for Mia. This job lets you keep all of that while also using skills that could help a lot of people. I don't want to go back to that life, the violence, the constant threat assessment, the paranoia. This isn't that life. This is consulting, analysis, prevention. You're not protecting people in war zones anymore. You're helping a company implement better security practices. Evelyn's voice softened. And you're doing it on your terms, with boundaries you set, in a way that doesn't compromise what matters most. Lucas looked through the window at Mia, bent over her homework with fierce concentration. Everything he'd done for 3 years had been about being available for her, about choosing presence over profession. But maybe Evelyn was right. Maybe he could do meaningful work without sacrificing what mattered. I need to think about it, he said finally. Of course. Take whatever time you need. The position will be there when you're ready. Evelyn stood to leave. Thanks for breakfast, and for letting me crash your Sunday mornings. It means more than you know. Your family, Lucas said, echoing Mia's words. Family doesn't crash, they just show up. Evelyn's eyes went bright again. She hugged him quickly, fiercely, then left before emotion could overwhelm her composure. Lucas watched her drive away and thought about second chances, about rebuilding lives from ruins, about how the strangest circumstances sometimes created the most important relationships. The following Tuesday, Lucas started his first official day as Halcyon's Director of Personal Security and Threat Assessment. He worked from the small office he'd set up in the 3rd bedroom, reviewing security protocols while Mia was at school and cutting off precisely at 2:45 p.m. to pick her up. The work was engaging without being consuming, important without being all-encompassing. He found himself enjoying the intellectual challenge of identifying vulnerabilities and designing solutions that didn't require weapons or violence. Victoria Chen became his primary contact at Halcyon, sending him reports and requesting assessments with the efficiency of someone who understood the value of his time. They developed an easy working relationship built on mutual respect and shared history. She'd risked everything to expose the conspiracy, and Lucas had helped protect her during the aftermath. That created a bond that transcended typical corporate relationships. "We're getting threats," Victoria told him during one of their weekly calls. "Nothing specific, just angry messages from people who think we betrayed American interests by refusing defense contracts. Most are harmless, but I want your assessment." Lucas reviewed the messages, tracking patterns and language that might indicate genuine danger versus performative outrage. 90% of these are just noise, but there are 3 that concern me. I'm flagging them for law enforcement and recommend enhanced security for Evelyn during public appearances for the next month. Done. Anything else? Yeah. The security team you have is competent but complacent. They're used to corporate threats, not personal ones. I want to bring in Diana Frost to run a training session on executive protection. The woman who kept Evelyn alive during the board meeting? The same. She's the best in the business. 3 days of intensive training, your team will be ready for anything. Victoria approved the budget without hesitation. Diana arrived the following week and put Halcyon's security through a masterclass in protection that left them exhausted and significantly more capable. She stopped by Lucas's house afterward, accepting coffee and studying the domestic life he'd built with professional interest. "You look happy," she observed. "Settled." "I am." "Good. The world needs people like you sharp and ready, but it also needs them healthy and whole. You're both now." She set down her mug. "Marcus wanted me to tell you something. His contractor business is expanding. He's looking for someone to run the training division, develop curriculum, mentor new operators. Thinks you'd be perfect for it. I'm not interested in going back to that world full-time." He knows. That's why he's offering part-time consulting, 20 hours a month, your schedule, teaching people to be better at protecting others. Pays well, uses your skills, doesn't consume your life. Diana smiled. "Seems like the universe is conspiring to pull you back into useful work. Or you and Marcus are conspiring." "That too. Think about it. No pressure, no timeline, just an option if you want it." After she left, Lucas did think about it. Thought about the young operators like he'd been once, dedicated and skilled but lacking the wisdom that came from experience. Thought about how many lives could be saved if those operators learned not just how to fight, but when to fight and when to find another solution. He called Marcus that evening. "I'll do the training consultation, but I need ironclad guarantees, my schedule, my methods, and if I ever feel like it's compromising my time with Mia, I walk away." "Done." "Welcome back, Luke. Even if it's just part-time." The months that followed fell into a rhythm that felt sustainable in ways Lucas's old life never had. 3 mornings a week he worked for Halcyon, assessing threats and improving security protocols. 1 weekend a month he traveled to Marcus's facility in Virginia, training operators in threat assessment and tactical decision-making. The rest of his time belonged to Mia, school pickups, homework help, weekend adventures, the ordinary magic of being present for his daughter's childhood. Money stopped being a constant stress. The house was paid for, Mia's college fund was growing, and Lucas had enough saved that 1 bad month wouldn't destroy them. More importantly, he'd found work that mattered without sacrificing what mattered most. Evelyn continued showing up for Sunday pancakes, becoming such a fixture that Mia started setting a place for her automatically. She brought news from Halcyon. The innovation lab was ahead of schedule. 3 major contracts with hospitals for medical technology, a partnership with a university for clean energy research. The company Elizabeth Cross had built was finally becoming what she'd envisioned. "The board wants to do something," Evelyn said one Sunday in early spring, almost 6 months after the conspiracy had been exposed. "A memorial for my mother, something permanent at Halcyon headquarters that honors what she built and what she believed in." "What are you thinking?" "A scholarship fund in her name. Full rides for women studying engineering, technology, and medical innovation. We'd fund 50 students annually, give them internships at Halcyon, mentor them into careers that matter." Evelyn's voice was thick with emotion. Mom always said the best way to change the world was to invest in people who wanted to change it with you. This feels like honoring that belief. She'd love it, Lucas said. When's the announcement? Next month. There's going to be a ceremony, press coverage, the whole thing. I'd really like you to be there, you and Mia both. Lucas hesitated. He'd carefully avoided any public connection between himself and Halcyon's crisis. The fewer people who knew about his involvement, the safer he and Mia remained. But Evelyn was looking at him with such hope, such need for the people who mattered to witness this moment. We'll be there, he said finally. Front row. The memorial announcement was held on a brilliant May morning in Halcyon's lobby, transformed into an event space filled with flowers and photographs of Elizabeth Cross. Lucas stood with Mia near the back, deliberately inconspicuous, while Evelyn spoke about her mother's vision and the scholarship that would carry it forward. My mother believed that innovation without ethics was just clever destruction, Evelyn said, her voice carrying across the crowd. She believed that the purpose of business wasn't just profit, but progress. Progress for everyone, not just those already in power. This scholarship is our promise to continue that belief, to invest in the next generation of innovators who will change the world the way she tried to change it. The crowd applauded. Cameras flashed. Reporters scribbled notes. And Lucas watched Evelyn own her grief and her power simultaneously, becoming the leader her mother had prepared her to be. After the ceremony, as the crowd dispersed and reporters packed up their equipment, Evelyn found Lucas and Mia near the elevator. "Thank you for coming," she said. "It meant everything to see you here." "Wouldn't have missed it," Lucas replied. "Your mother would be proud." "I hope so." Evelyn crouched down to Mia's level. "What did you think of the ceremony?" "I think your mom sounds like she was really smart and really brave," Mia said seriously. "Like you." Evelyn pulled Mia into a hug that lasted several seconds longer than casual. When she stood, her eyes were bright with tears she didn't bother hiding. "I have something for you," she told Lucas. "Both of you, actually." She led them to her office, still the same one Lucas had cleaned 6 months ago, though now it felt different, more personal. Photographs of Elizabeth Cross shared space with drawings Mia had made during Sunday morning visits. The corporate armor had been replaced with evidence of actual life being lived. Evelyn pulled out an envelope and handed it to Lucas. "The board voted last week to create a new position, Chief Security Officer. It's a senior leadership role, full-time, significant salary, and benefits. They want you." Lucas started to shake his head, but Evelyn held up a hand. "I told them you'd say no. I told them you had a daughter to raise and a life you'd carefully built that didn't include 60-hour work weeks. So they restructured the position. Part-time CSO, 30 hours weekly maximum, complete autonomy over your schedule, and the understanding that family comes first. Always." Evelyn opened the envelope. Inside was a formal offer letter with a salary that made Lucas's head spin, along with a handwritten note from the board. "We're not asking you to change your priorities. We're asking to benefit from them. Someone who understands that protecting people matters more than protecting profits is exactly who should be leading our security division." Lucas looked at Mia, who was studying a model of Halcyon's new innovation lab on Evelyn's desk. He thought about the life he'd built, the careful balance between work and presence, the promise he'd made to always be there for his daughter. "Can I think about it?" he asked. "Take all the time you need, but Lucas, I need you to understand something. This isn't just a job offer. This is me asking you to help me build something worth protecting. You showed me what integrity looks like. Now I'm asking you to help me build a company that practices it." That evening, Lucas made dinner while Mia worked on homework at the kitchen table. They'd developed a routine over the months in the new house. He cooked while she studied, then they ate together and talked about their days. It was simple and predictable and everything he'd wanted when he walked away from his old life. "Daddy, can I ask you something?" "Always, sweetheart." "Are you happy?" The question caught him off guard. "Of course I'm happy. Why would you ask that?" Mia shrugged, not looking up from her math worksheet. "Sophie's dad works all the time. He's never home for dinner, and Sophie says he's always sad even when he's there. I don't want you to be sad." Lucas set down the spatula and pulled up a chair beside her. "I'm not sad. I'm the opposite of sad. Do you know why?" "Why?" Because I get to have dinner with you every night. Because I get to help with your homework and hear about your day and know everything that's happening in your life. Some dads work jobs that make them miss all of that. I used to be one of those dads. But not anymore. But what if you want to do other work? Important work, like helping Miss Evelyn. Lucas studied his daughter's face, seeing wisdom that shouldn't exist in an 8-year-old. Did Miss Evelyn talk to you about the job offer? She said you're the best at keeping people safe. She said Halcyon needs someone like you to make sure nobody gets hurt. Mia looked up with serious eyes. I think you should do it. If it makes you happy and you can still have dinner with me. You'd be okay with me working more hours? As long as you're still my dad first. As long as you still come to my school stuff and help with homework and do the kiss thing at bedtime. Lucas felt his throat tighten. Love you to the moon, kiddo. Love you to the stars, Daddy. Now can we finish dinner? I'm starving. They ate spaghetti and talked about Mia's upcoming volcano demonstration, about summer plans and whether they should get a dog. Normal conversation, normal evening, the kind of ordinary magic Lucas had been chasing for 3 years. But underneath it, he felt something shifting. Not a return to his old life, but an evolution into something new. A way to use his skills for good without sacrificing what mattered. A way to protect people without losing himself in the process. The next morning, Lucas called Evelyn. I'll take the position, part-time CSO, with the understanding that if it ever interferes with being Mia's father, I walk away. Deal. When can you start? After Mia's volcano demonstration next week. Priorities. Evelyn laughed. Wouldn't have it any other way. The volcano demonstration was spectacular and messy, exactly as Mia had promised. Evelyn attended despite having a board meeting scheduled for the same time, sitting next to Lucas in the elementary school cafeteria while 8-year-olds created eruptions of baking soda and vinegar. When Mia's volcano erupted perfectly, sending foam cascading down the papier-mâché slopes, Evelyn applauded as loudly as any parent. She's remarkable, Evelyn said afterward. You're raising someone special. I'm just trying not to screw her up too badly. The remarkable part is all her. They walked out to the parking lot together, and Lucas realized something had fundamentally changed in the 6 months since that desperate night in Halcyon's offices. Evelyn wasn't just the woman he'd protected anymore. She was family, woven into the fabric of his and Mia's life in ways that felt permanent and right. I'm scared, Evelyn admitted suddenly, about running the company, about living up to my mother's legacy, about making the right choices when the stakes are high. Good. Fear keeps you careful. It's overconfidence that gets people killed. You sound like Diana. Diana taught me everything I know about staying alive. I'd be an idiot not to listen. Lucas paused by his car. But here's what I've learned since leaving that world. Fear is useful, but it's not a compass. You can't let it make your decisions. You use it to stay sharp, but you make choices based on what's right, not what's safe. Is that what you did? Helping me was definitely not safe. Helping you was the first right thing I'd done in 3 years. Everything before that was just hiding. Lucas smiled. You reminded me that invisibility is a choice, not a permanent condition. That matters. Evelyn hugged him, quick and fierce, then drove away to whatever board meeting she'd rescheduled. Lucas picked up Mia from her classroom, listened to her excited recap of the volcano demonstration, and drove home to the house that somehow felt more like home every day. His first official week as Halcyon's chief security officer was everything Evelyn had promised. Challenging but not consuming, important but not all-encompassing. He restructured the security division, implemented new threat assessment protocols, and trained the existing team in methodologies he'd learned over 12 years of protecting people in impossible situations. Victoria Chen became his partner in implementation, navigating corporate politics while Lucas focused on practical security. They made a good team, her understanding of how to move initiatives through bureaucracy combined with his understanding of how to actually keep people safe. We got another threat today, Victoria told him during a Friday afternoon call. Someone claiming they're going to make Halcyon pay for betraying American defense interests. Local police are investigating, but I wanted you aware. Lucas reviewed the message, analyzing language patterns and threat credibility. It's the same person who's been sending messages for 3 months. Lots of noise, no actual capability, but increase Evelyn's security detail for the next week anyway. Better overcautious than understaffed. Already done. You're good at this, the security part, but also the judgment calls. Knowing when to worry and when to ignore. 12 years of practice and a lot of expensive mistakes. He hung up and checked the time. 3:30 p.m., 30 minutes before Mia's pickup. Enough time to finish the risk assessment he'd been working on, then transition completely into dad mode. The balance was delicate, but sustainable, and Lucas was learning to walk the line between both worlds without falling into either extreme. Summer arrived with the kind of heat that made New York City shimmer and drove families to beaches and parks. Lucas took Mia to Coney Island on weekends, teaching her to body surf while watching the horizon for threats that didn't exist anymore. The paranoia was fading gradually, replaced by something that felt almost like peace. Evelyn joined them sometimes, laughing as waves knocked her over and building sandcastles with Mia that were architecturally questionable but enthusiastically constructed. She'd learned to exist outside the CEO role, to be just Evelyn instead of Evelyn Cross of Halcyon Group. The transformation was subtle but profound. "I'm thinking about dating," she confessed one Sunday morning over pancakes. "Actually, dating, not the corporate networking disguised as romance that I've been doing since college." "That's good," Lucas said. "You should live your life, not just manage your company." Easy to say, harder to do. How do I know someone wants me versus wants access to Halcyon? You trust your instincts, and you take it slow. Anyone worth dating will understand that you need time to build trust. Evelyn smiled wryly. Relationship advice from a widowed janitor turned security consultant. My life has gotten weird. Weird is better than miserable. Truth. In August, the Manhattan District Attorney announced indictments against William Cross and 3 former Halcyon board members for conspiracy, securities fraud, and obstruction of justice. Daniel Reeves remained at large, probably living under an assumed name in a country without extradition treaties. But the core conspiracy was broken, the players either facing justice or scattered to the winds. Evelyn attended her father's arraignment with Victoria beside her and Lucas watching from the back of the courtroom. William Cross looked diminished in his prison jumpsuit, nothing like the powerful man who'd once controlled a business empire. He didn't look at his daughter during the proceedings, didn't acknowledge her existence. The judge set trial for the following spring and denied bail given the flight risk. William Cross would spend the next 8 months in federal detention, waiting to face the consequences of his choices. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed Evelyn with questions. She handled them with the poise she'd learned from her mother, speaking about justice and accountability without betraying the grief she must have felt. "Do you regret exposing your father?" one reporter shouted. Evelyn paused, considering the question carefully. "I regret that it was necessary. I regret that he made choices that led here. But I don't regret protecting my mother's legacy and the company she built. That was the right thing to do, even when it was painful." Lucas watched from the edge of the crowd, proud of her strength and glad he'd played some small part in helping her find it. Then he slipped away before reporters could identify him, maintaining the careful anonymity that let him move between worlds without being trapped in either. Fall arrived with the kind of perfect weather that made people forget summer's oppressive heat. Mia started 3rd grade with the confidence of a kid who knew she was loved and safe. Lucas continued his part-time work for Halcyon and Marcus, finding satisfaction in using his skills without being consumed by them. And one Sunday morning in October, exactly 1 year after he'd handed Evelyn that first note in Halcyon's office, they gathered in the house in Brooklyn to celebrate. "A year ago I was terrified and alone," Evelyn said, raising a glass of orange juice while Mia giggled at the formal toast. "Now I have a company that means something, a board that shares my values, and a family I chose instead of one I was born into. That's worth celebrating." "To chosen family," Lucas agreed, clinking his glass against hers while Mia joined in enthusiastically. They made pancakes together, the 3 of them working around each other with practiced ease. Victoria stopped by with donuts, Diana called to check in, and Sarah sent a message reporting that Meridian Holdings had filed for bankruptcy after losing all their major contracts. The conspiracy that had threatened to destroy Evelyn and consume Lucas was truly finished. The people responsible were facing justice or living in exile, and the 2 people who'd fought back were building lives worth living instead of just surviving. What happens now? Mia asked later when Evelyn had left, and it was just the two of them cleaning up breakfast dishes. Now we keep doing what we're doing, Lucas said. School and work and Sunday pancakes. The good ordinary stuff that makes life worth living. But what if something bad happens again? What if someone tries to hurt Miss Evelyn? Lucas dried a plate and considered how to answer honestly without scaring his daughter. Then we help her, the same way we did before, but we also trust that she's strong enough to protect herself now. That's what this year has been about. Not just surviving, but learning to thrive. Miss Evelyn says you saved her life. Miss Evelyn saved herself. I just reminded her she could. Mia thought about this seriously. I think you saved each other. That's what families do. Out of the mouths of babes, Lucas thought. His 8-year-old daughter had articulated something he'd been struggling to understand, that saving Evelyn had also saved him from the invisible prison he'd built around his life. That night, after Mia was asleep, Lucas sat on the porch and looked at the stars scattered across the October sky. Somewhere in Manhattan, Evelyn was probably working late despite her promises to maintain better work-life balance. Somewhere in Virginia, Diana was training operators in the protocols Lucas had designed. Somewhere in the digital ether, Sarah was tracking threats and protecting data. And here in Brooklyn, Lucas Hale was exactly where he chose to be, present, available, and finally learning that you could be both a protector and protected, both strong and vulnerable, both a father and something more. His phone buzzed with a message from Evelyn. Thank you. For everything. For seeing me, for protecting me, for becoming family. I wouldn't have survived this year without you. Lucas typed a reply. You would have survived, but I'm glad you didn't have to do it alone. See you Sunday for pancakes. Wouldn't miss it. Love you guys. Love you too. He set down his phone and listened to the night sounds of his Brooklyn neighborhood, distant traffic, a dog barking, wind rustling through leaves. The sounds of life being lived by people who had no idea they'd come so close to disaster, who'd been protected by someone they'd never know existed. And that was fine with Lucas. He'd learned that the greatest victories weren't the ones that made headlines or earned recognition. They were the quiet triumphs of showing up every day, of choosing what mattered over what was easy, of building something worth protecting and then protecting it fiercely. Inside the house, Mia stirred in her sleep, probably dreaming about volcanoes or astronaut tears or whatever filled the imagination of 8-year-olds. Lucas stood and checked the locks from old habit, made sure the security system was armed, verified that the world outside remained safely outside. Then he climbed the stairs to kiss his daughter's forehead one more time, to whisper the words that had become their ritual. Love you to the stars, sweetheart, always and forever. And in that moment, in that house, with that promise spoken into the darkness, Lucas Hale knew he'd finally found what he'd been searching for since the night his wife died, and his world shattered. Not invisibility, not redemption, not even peace, just purpose. The kind that comes from protecting what matters, from showing up when it's hard, from choosing to be seen by the people who need you most. He returned to the porch one final time, looking at the stars Mia loved so much, and made a different promise than the ones he'd made before. Not a promise to hide, not a promise to fight, just a promise to live, fully, presently, with all the messy complexity that life demanded. Because that's what heroes did. Not the ones in movies or books, but the real ones. The ones who made pancakes and helped with homework and showed up for volcano demonstrations while also keeping people safe and fighting injustice when it mattered. The ones who understood that the greatest strength wasn't in being fearless, but in being afraid and choosing courage anyway. The ones who learned that you could honor the past without being imprisoned by it, that you could build a future without forgetting what you'd lost, that you could be both a warrior and a father without betraying either role. Lucas Hale had been invisible for 3 years, hiding from a world that had taken everything he loved. But Evelyn Cross's desperate note had pulled him back into the light, had reminded him that some fights were worth fighting and some people were worth protecting, and some moments demanded that you risk everything for what was right. And now, standing on his porch in Brooklyn with his daughter sleeping safely upstairs and a job that mattered waiting tomorrow and family he'd chosen gathering for pancakes next Sunday, Lucas finally understood the truth he'd been running from. Invisibility wasn't safety, it was just another kind of prison. But being seen, really seen by people who mattered, that was freedom. And freedom, Lucas had learned, was worth fighting for, even when it was terrifying, especially when it was terrifying. Because the things worth having were always the things that scared you most. He went inside, locked the door behind him, and climbed into bed with the certain knowledge that tomorrow would bring new challenges, new threats, new reasons to be afraid. But it would also bring Mia's laughter and Evelyn's friendship and work that mattered and Sunday morning pancakes and all the beautiful ordinary moments that made life worth protecting. And that, Lucas thought as sleep finally claimed him, was more than enough. It was everything.